Oh yeah, the nose stuff, and now we're on the stiff side of the shaft, and I had the Steve Greenway from Victory called me on the phone, and I'm like, yo, what's up, you know? Well, I'll wait until we're talking to tell that whole story, but
talking
it was
now.
it was a great call. Yeah, it was a great call, and. Basically, he called and he said, I just want to talk to you and let you know how we do it here at Victory, right? And he said, we actually do touch every single arrow. It goes through a proof testing process, and arrows come down into a thing, and it lands on this ball bearing loaded deal. And then proof testing is when they take it and they max it out. They put it 8 to 12 inches. And he says they do this with every arrow, even the kitty arrows and, everything. And he noticed at one time, because he's done a lot of testing, and I've kind of known who he was over the years, because he made those fluted, yep, he made those fluted aluminum arrows and had the big. I remember
what they called those.
CAE was the logo that I remember that was on the arrow, and there was a salesman that we lovingly referred to as Crazy Carl, who sold them. Carl Leakowitz might have been his name. I can't remember, but anyway, he's been in archery a long time, and specifically with arrow shafts. So he's done all kinds of testing and everything. Well, Mitsubishi has got this arrow company now, and they put a lot of money behind testing and a whole bunch of stuff. Well, he noticed when they proof tested the arrow that the arrow would orient.
Yeah, it would automatically spin.
Right? It would snap to, a particular orientation.
Yeah.
And he says then they laser, a little mark on the arrow. This machine automatically lasers a mark. And then they have an eye on their labeling machine that reads the mark so that the label is oriented on the shaft. Right, so that particular mark. But knowing what I know, I asked him, I said, are you actually spine testing the arrow, or are you just proof testing it? I said, he says, well, yeah, we do. I said, have you taken a shaft and just measured the spine every 10 degrees all the way around, the shaft? And he goes, yeah. I said, so what's the greatest deviation that you see, in your shaft? And he said, 0.005. 0.005 to me doesn't seem like that big of a deal, right? When arrow spine sorting is usually in 25 to 30 thousandths, And for those at home that want a kind of a representative, measure, your fingernail is about 20 thousandths thick, right? Yeah. So that'll kind of give you an idea how much of a bend that really is. Mm-hmm. So I told him, I said, it's not gigantic, is it? I said, have you done any kind of accuracy testing as a comparison? Because I was at Martin Archery when they started the whole stiff side of the shaft and all of that on Archery Talk way back when. So I went, and they had a gazillion-dollar spine tester, and I could spine the arrows and all of that. And I randomized a dozen and had a dozen that was perfectly lined up. And bare shafts at 70 meters indoors out of a shooting machine. And I wasn't just pulling the machine and then shooting it. I was pulling the machine and re-aiming it.
Re-aiming it, yeah.
Making sure that it was on,
dialed in the middle. Yep.
And they pounded. Both of them did, right? So I didn't test it any further. I was like, for my own archery, I don't have to worry about that, right? That's not a significant enough difference for me to spend valuable practice time working on it. But he said they did human testing, right? They did machine testing, and the difference was minor, but you could see a difference. He said, but the difference really showed up with broadheads. And he said this is the most important with broadheads because the tiniest inconsistency with a broadhead really shows downrange, right? Yeah. And so that makes sense. And then he added confidence in your equipment is worth something. Right. And I agree. Right. If you go through all the trouble, right, to make sure everything is exactly spine aligned and beautifully perfect, and, that gives you confidence in your equipment. But as an archery coach, who's trying to train high performance athletes, I'm like, that doesn't matter enough. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. Get out there and shoot your bow, because those shafts being perfect is not going to help you with that nasty trigger fling you got going on there.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So let's spend some time working on that instead. Right? And so I think that us, the shooter being the greatest variation of what's going on here, that more time spent on us, right, would be more beneficial for overall accuracy and all of that. There was one other thing that he noted, that fall away rests showed a smaller deviation than blade rests did during the testing, which I found interesting. I did my own, very unscientific testing when I was deciding. All the cool kids, in 2010, 2012, back in that, all the cool kids were shooting fall away rests, and I did fall away rests in the early 80s, and we're like, these things are trash. I don't want anything to do with this, right? And when I would give a workshop, I would say, never, ever, ever use a fall away for target archery, right? But all the cool kids were winning with fall away rests and target. They weren't having these catastrophic failures that I was used to and all of that. So I tested it, and I tested it for like 2 full seasons, going back and forth, tracking my average down to the 10th of a point in the whole bit, and was able to prove to myself that fall away rests are actually more forgiving, and the catastrophic failures of the 80s weren't happening.
Yeah.
And if something did fail on the course, it's an easy fix. You could fix a Hamsky with a bootlace, and it'll still work perfectly and shoot a straight shot. So why not, right? So that's kind of where I was at with him. The call was to say, I just want to make sure that we're not lumped into that group of randomly labeling arrows because shooters require it. And that was the whole point of the call, right?
Yeah.
And it was a good call. It wasn't like a, don't you say that.
No, Steve's a good guy. I've dealt with him a ton. I've been on a hunt with him once. Really good guy. But before we navigate away from that, I want to ask you something, because you've been in this longer than me, and there's not a lot of people that out there that have that wealth of knowledge. The stiff side of the arrow. Why are we looking for the stiff side instead of the weak side? And my logic being, if you fire an arrow out of a bow and everything else is perfect, it's going to bend the weak direction, not the stiff direction, correct?
Well, both directions will actually bend, right?
To start, the initial reaction.
And it's
out of
not
the bow.
that we're actually looking for the stiff side.
Okay.
And we're not specifically looking for the weak side either. We're trying to provide consistency. And all of that came from wooden arrows.
Yes.
Because when you manufacture wooden arrows, the grain is
is
horizontal.
stiffer in one
and if you
direction.
orient the grain vertical, it behaves extremely weak.
Yeah.
And if you orient the grain, horizontal to the cushion plunger or the bow, it's stiffer.
Yes.
And the whole point of spine aligning wooden arrows was just so the nocks were located consistently, so you had the same behavior on all the arrows.
Yeah.
If you had the weak side oriented, it would still be accurate if the spine was appropriate for the bow.
Yeah, it's just
right?
such a variance between the stiff side and the weak side on a
Yeah.
cedar that you're going to get a lot bigger spine
Yeah.
variation. And it's even way more critical because all those guys are shooting with their fingers and the strings rolling off their finger and creating more of a paradox than you'd ever get with any kind of a release, right?
Right. And there's kind of 3 different ways, that people are doing that now. You have the measuring for the stiff side. And currently, I haven't been able to find a store-bought spine tester that's accurate enough to show me a significant difference. So I haven't been able to really do that. Then you have the compression of the shaft, right?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot lately.
And when you compress a shaft to I'm going to use this in quote marks, to a failure point, and it'll buckle, right? And that is a material failure of a slender shaft,
Correct.
right? And that buckle, it's called Euler's buckle, that when you press that, it's kind of a formula that dictates what's going to happen. And the buckle happens on the direction of the fibers, or a tiny inconsistency in manufacture of the material, tiny inconsistencies in the material, those things. It will buckle to wherever that strongest inconsistency is, no matter how microscopic it is, it'll buckle there.
Sure. It's still going to give that direction.
Yeah, and that is pushing a shaft beyond its usable range, let's say, because a shaft doesn't buckle like that coming out of a bow at all. But then you have puring, which is what they do with golf shafts. And they hold a golf shaft on the end, and then they go thwing like this, and the shaft goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
And as you rotate that shaft every 10 degrees, the arc of the vibration changes.
Ah, that's
and when you hit a particular point, that shaft will flex up and down, right? Perfectly in a mark. And I've gone through a little trouble. I'm still studying this. I'm not going to call it law yet, but there's enough people doing it with golf shafts and other things that it's about proven, right? But I've taken like a laser, a UV laser, and put it in the end of the shaft, then put glow-in-the-dark paper on the wall so I could see the ghost of the trail.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But as you rotate that shaft, right, it will go from perfectly vertical and it'll begin to draw an ellipse, and the ellipse will max out. It'll get to its maximum size, and then it'll come back down until it gets to the point where it's like this. And that is the smooth bending, or what you could call the bending preference of the material. And it will always bend in that direction. So when you have the bending of the shaft, especially a finger shooter with a finger release, Justin Hewish, 1996 Olympic gold medalist, he has done this quite a bit, and even kind of posted a little bit. And I was like, shh, bro, what do you do? Right? And I haven't talked about it a whole lot, just because, as you see, when I talk about something that goes against convention, I kind of get flamed on. I get flamed on the internet. So I've been holding that one a little bit until I was absolutely
sure.
sure.
You, by the way,
right?
Oh God.
And but what it does is, by orienting the knock, and Justin with the finger release, he's noticed that if you have oriented all the shafts with the purer point, I'm going to call it,
sure,
that you may still get one that goes from the group. And he noted that if you just go 180 degrees from the mark that you made, it'll behave again.
Gotcha.
So I don't know this for sure, but everybody knows that when you have an arrow that's misbehaving and then you rotate the knock, you get better or different behavior. I'm wondering if that's what they're doing inadvertently.
It could be, for sure,
when they're rotating the knock. Mm-hmm. But I've found that particular step is worthwhile, and I actually waste practice time to do that with my arrows, because it makes it a little less random in flight. And even at my unpracticed old band level, I can tell a difference.
Okay.
Right? So it's worth it. I mean, it's worth it enough. I have a rotary table clamped to my bench that I can stick the shaft in, and it's got a collet on it, and it holds it, and then I can
How are you actually bouncing the arrow? Like what?
I just put my finger on it and boing like that, right?
And there's enough variation that even with your finger doing it, you can.
It.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see it. All I got to do is just give it a tick, and it'll go. When I put the point in the end of the shaft, add a little weight, it'll like that. And just looking at it, you can see it. If you get fancy and use a laser on a piece of glow-in-the-dark paper, you can really see it. And the farther distance that you have that the laser shines, the more you can see it as well. But you can see it by eye, right? When you hold it by the end and give it that
What
flick.
are you using to hold the end?
I have a rotary table, and it sits in this thing, and it has a little collet in there, and I slide the shaft in the collet, and I tighten it down, and the collet closes.
It's
like
clamping
a tool
on the
holder.
shaft?
It clamps on the shaft, right? And it clamps on about an inch of the shaft when I put it in there. I do it with the full-length arrow before I even cut it, put points in it, or any of that, because it doesn't seem to matter when you cut the shaft. It doesn't seem to change that behavior or change the direction or anything, but it makes it harder to see the stiffer the shaft gets.
Sure.
So
there's going to be less movement.
I do it longer, so I get greater oscillation, right? And that rotary table, if I turn the knob a full turn, it gives me exactly 10 degrees of rotation, so I can kind of manage. You could hold the arrow down on the end of the table. You could just use a
clamp if you wanted to kind of redneck it.
You could redneck it and get it dang close, but that rotary table makes it pretty precise, and it's faster because it's precise, right? And I'll mark it. And I'll make the arrow up, make sure that my knock is oriented to that mark, and then my dozen is as precise as I can possibly get it, right? So that actually made a difference for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see if you tried it with the Victory arrows, if you would notice that the spine aligning was accurate based on what
I
the
have
information.
done it.
Okay.
And with Victory arrows,
Yep.
because UltraView has the 1K
that's right, yeah,
arrows,
made by
right?
Victory.
And that's a Mitsubishi shaft. They pretty much make all the carbon that everybody uses, right?
Yeah.
So I've done it, and you'll find that the stiff side, if you're able to identify one, and the buckled side and the pure don't necessarily line up.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get close, but they fail to line up more often than not.
Well, if the reality of the matter is if you can identify the flex the arrow's going to do, that's all that really matters. That's what you're trying to find in all those things. You're trying to determine which way it's going to bend, right?
Right.
If you've figured out a way beyond those things to just simply visually see how it's going to bend,
Right.
the rest of it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
If you can do that.
Yeah, if you back it down just a little, simplify it even more.
Yeah.
Spine dictates how much of a flex that we need in order to get bow clearance or a nice straight launch out of the bow.
Right.
The pure mark or the stiff side or whatever is we're getting a consistency in how it bends.
Mm-hmm.
So spine is how much, the marks that we're putting on it is a consistency point. And the thing that I'm saying is that the buckle point is pushing the shaft beyond its normal use case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that's as important as the pure point is.
Well, the buckle point's going to show you the weak side anyway. And the reason I had asked of stiff versus weak and what it mattered, because I had a theory that's why knock tuning wasn't working when you were finding the stiff side, because the weak side's not 180 from whatever stiff side you find. A lot of times it's 90 to 120 degrees, somewhere in there.
Right.
For some reason, I don't know why. I mean, I'm not an expert by any means. I just know what I've experienced. And when I built all a dozen arrows with the weak side straight up, they all shot exactly the same through paper. I never had a variance. So I assumed that was because the flex is immediately starting out of the bow, coming up out of the bow. If I put the weak side up when you fired it, so it made them all react the same out of the bow. So that's why I was curious if that
something
was
you just said made my brain go, right? That you're orienting the weak side with the knocking point or up or down or whatever, but you're orienting it up.
Yes.
That because it's weak, it has a higher likelihood of following that path.
Correct.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. I called Greenwood about it like 3 years ago. I was like, I think you're measuring the wrong thing.
What did he say?
He said, we'll test it.
Okay.
And I never heard back.
But it also makes sense with the contact on the rest. Like if you're creating the weak side lifting versus it pushing into the rest, it seems like it
give
would
you
be
greater clearance over the launcher.
So
it
the
would be more
contact
forgiving.
point on the rest is a whole other thing. It's
Hey,
the
wait.
nose.
Pause a second.
Hey,
you didn't do an intro.
Welcome to the Podium Hunter Podcast. We just sat down and started hammering. I wasn't going to interrupt. It was awesome. Follow me on Instagram at @BrandonMcDonald_archery. Follow him everywhere at Podium Archer. Use discount code BMAC for 10% off at podiumarcher.com, please. Push the subscribe button. Listen, if you're here, you've already heard like 10 minutes of an epic, in-depth archery conversation. Like we are going to be in the weeds the entire next 4 hours. By the way, I hope you peed before we started. All right, what are people supposed to do on the audio platforms?
Leave us a review and follow on any audio platform. It's about the only way the public can see the popularity of one of these things. The analytics, all these are kind of hidden from the general public. So that's the one thing you can go and look at and see that how popular something is. And you guys are doing a great job of it. We're still 5 stars on Spotify, and we're really close to 1,000 reviews.
Nice.
But need more following. Got to follow it. And it's just going to alert you when we release something. And you don't have to worry about it. It's already going to tell you. Yeah, leave us a review. Unless you don't like it, then just go away.
And who's our guest today?
We have... Oh, I think everyone has to know.
At this point, for sure.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't.
Well, a lot of people in the hunting community don't.
Yeah, they don't.
So,
I know. We're going to change that.
This is George Ryals. He's been around forever. I met George when I was like 14 or 15. He was working at Martin indirectly, briefly, because Martin was pretty close to my home in Spokane. And one of the main people in the original archery talk world as well, which was one of the first places where communication was going back and forth about this stuff in an open forum. Again, what we're looking at and sitting in today is largely because of that, in my opinion. It's just morphed into a lot of other different things. So, and one of the most accomplished archery people that ever existed, and he's got a lot of knowledge and some controversial takes on some certain things that get, riled up. And I get phone
It's
calls
just
where
like
people are
most
mad.
of the time, I tell my people, the people that are interested in hearing what I'm saying, I tell my people all these things, and they try it, and it works. Up until maybe 15 years ago, I wasn't telling anybody this stuff just because I didn't want to argue on the internet, right?
Right.
And we started Archery Talk for the sole purpose of doing excellent customer service out in the open, for Martin Archery, because you could help a guy out with a busted Martin Warthog that was so far out of warranty. Some of the guys in the plant had never even seen one, right? And nobody would know, right? So the whole idea behind that was so that we could service the customer a lot better, and it became the whole Archers Helping Archers thing,
And now it's just archers shitting on archers in there.
It's the Wild West out there now because there's no moderation or anything that I know of.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it in years, really.
Yeah, no, I stayed away from it, honestly. I posted once because I knew what the product launches were, and everyone was predicting what they thought was going to happen.
Yeah, there's something
and then
coming.
as soon as it was okay to post it, I posted it, and then there was 15 people like, "Who the hell is this person?" And I'm like, I'm just going to stay away from this altogether. I'm out. But it was not when I started looking at it. It wasn't very pretty, so I thought, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
But no, they've been around forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why don't we back up and tell a little bit of your history? Let's take a few minutes and kind of go back through who you are. And I think it's important just because obviously I think this is more of a hunting podcast for you to introduce some of the people that you've been integral in influencing their life. The people.
So I've been working in archery my entire life, from fletching arrows as a little kid. I would get dropped off by the school bus at the archery shop, and Dad, on the way home from work, I was a Gen Xer, so we were largely unattended, right? Right. Okay.
Right there.
So I'd get dropped off, and then Dad would come back around and pick me up on his way home, and I'm in there fletching arrows and the whole thing. Well, I got lucky. My entire trip through working as a kid in the archery and growing up and getting involved in target. I got involved in target archery because I would be working in the pro shop and a bow hunter would come in and ask a bow hunting question and I would answer, and they're looking over the top of my head looking for the person in charge, right? Yeah. So I got involved in target archery basically for street cred. So look, I won the state championship, so it's okay. I can work on your bow. I'm not going to break it, right? And I got lucky. I mean, my life story is several lucky happenstances. I got in with Dan Quillian at Archery Traditions, and he was one of the fathers of modern bow hunting. He was part of the deer relocation program in the Southeast and did the whole thing because I ran around with him and did all of his shows, and he sold traditional bows and the whole thing. And I got to stand next to Fred Bear and a lot of these, Earl Hoyt, a lot of these people, I got to sit there while they're all eating lunch on their laps and just listen to what's going on at these archery shows, like the National Archery Show in Vegas. That was the big show, at the time. And I got to sit and watch all this stuff, right? So my associations with these people, and I got involved with Martin because Dan was designing traditional bows that were super hot, super fast. They were the fastest traditional bows out at the time, and Martin was manufacturing them. And I would communicate with Martin, and I'm like an 18-year-old kid, and I'm communicating with Martin. And no, we need the laminations to be tapered, and the reason we want it tapered is we want a smooth bend starting from the top of the riser all the way to the knock. And we want the end of the limb to unload at the last minute, right? We had a very specific way that we wanted to do it, right? And we were communicating with them, and they would say, it will never work. Old Larry Hatfield that worked for Martin for 50 years, right? He said, it'll never work. Well, and then once he got it made, and he'd call us back, and he goes, I'm pleased to report this actually works, and it's super fast, right? So Dan was going to retire. Martin called me and said, hey, how'd you like to come up and work for us? Right. So I ended up spending 13 years working for Martin Archery, and I did everything from design their products to make their 100-page showroom quality catalog to managing their shooter program and the whole thing. Started Archery Talk during that time period. And so through the years, I've gone from company to company, making releases, making bows, making cams. And a lot of folks don't know that a lot of the stuff that they're playing around with right now came from my desk, right? Like the one example is the movable trigger on the thumb, right? No one had ever done that. And while we were figuring out at Stan, when I worked for them, I went to Vegas, and everyone that I could get to sit still, I measured their hands. And I figured out when they curled the fingers, what was the distance from their front knuckle to the base of their thumb? How did that correlate? Could I make a large, medium, and a small so that it fit people a lot better? And then I noticed that everyone's thumb, regardless of their hand anatomy being somewhat similar, and I could class that into a large, medium, and small, we couldn't necessarily class the thumb into 3 exact little pigeonholes. There was so much variation there. So we made a trigger that would extend in and out, left, right, and in a circle, right? So I could get extension, angle, and angle of attack, for the thumb. So the whole point is when you set yourself up in the bow and you pull the bow back and you anchor, you didn't have to modify your hand position once you were at full draw. So you had a greater degree of consistency. So we made that thing, and shortly after, the entire world has made the identical thing on their release, and that's just how releases are made now, and nobody has any idea.
Yeah.
There's quite a few little things like that. So I've been super, super lucky, in the archery business, and my dad was absolutely sure that I was going to starve to death in a ditch trying to make money on archery, and, all I wanted to do was play for a living. And I was about 35 years old before I finally got his blessing, and he goes, wow, I'm really proud that you made this actually work. You created an industry like coaching so that really wasn't there in a money-making level, and figured out how to make it work. And he's like, I'm not, the blessing is I'm not going to worry about you anymore. I think you're going to be okay. Right.
It only took till 35. You only had about 15 years of worry.
35. Yeah. He was sure that I was going to be destitute.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So let's move past that then, and let's get into some of the coaching stuff, and then probably some of the kids that you were involved with.
So I made a decision. I went from Martin Archery to Stan, and then from Stan I came home. And I made a decision at that point that I'm okay now. I have done just about everything that I wanted to do. I have checked out all the boxes and the big high arching goals that I wanted to hit as a competitive pro. And back in the day, we were going to 35 shoots a year. We were like doing all kinds of stuff. And I finally got to the point where I says, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay with just being okay, and I'm ready to prioritize somebody else's archery. And whatever mine turns out to be, I'm fine, right? And now I practice enough so that I don't embarrass the kids when we go to a tournament. And every now and then it works out. I have a little flash in the pan, and I might win something every now and then.
On a heater this weekend.
Yeah. Every now and then, and that works out. Aging up into the old man division helped because I was back. It feels like to me like we're getting the band back together. I turned 50, and Randy Morocco and Rio Wild and Dave Cousins is about to turn 50. I'm talking to Jim Despart trying to bring him back. Eric Griggs has got his bow back out. He's shooting a little bit. And I'm like, come on. When we were at TAC, I was like, you going to come out and shoots? I said, you're 50 this year. You going to come out and shoots? He goes, I don't know. I might do it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and my hope is that if all of us get in there and we all start shooting scores, and those guys are good.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that they're shooting cruddy scores.
No, it's committing the time to it.
Yeah. Those guys are good. So I think the senior division will be something to watch rather than the oh and also category. Right. Because all of these older archery greats are now turning 50, and they're like, I said, let's get the band back together. Let's make this something. And I'm not going to say it's easier to win, but your percentages are much better.
Yeah.
Because the scores are a lot closer, to each other, and you still have that excitement in the senior division where if you miss once, you're out. You still get that fire, But shooting against Matthias Fullerton and Mike Schlosser, I'm not going to try to fool anybody.
Yeah, who we kidding? Who we kidding here?
Outdoors, if I shoot a 700, I'm like, yeah, I killed that day, right? And that's 22nd place in the the regular young guy division.
Yeah.
So I made that decision that I was okay. I wasn't going to like prioritize 8 hours a day on my archery. I opened up a shop because I figured
was that a difficult decision for you to make?
Not really, because I had already gotten to the point to where the Jesse Broadwater and Rio and a few of those others came up behind me and started beating us. I've got a cool picture that shows us at Vegas in the old Riviera Hotel, and you can see me and Jim Despart and a few other guys, and we're standing, Mike Anderson, we're all standing here like this, captains of the universe. And then when you pan over to the other targets, you see Jesse and Rio and Nathan Brooks and Chance Bobeff, and they're standing here like this, really, quiet and still, and they're against the wall, and it was like we thought we were captains of the universe. But if you pan over here and look at these guys, they were in the process of taking our spot,
destroying you.
Right? Yeah, they were in the process, and it's a constant, overturning. And the kids laugh at me about how old I am, and I said, just wait a minute, you'll see how it's going to be, right? So they had already, even Rio and Jesse were beginning to be replaced by the next, group of hot rods that were coming along. So I wasn't thinking that I was out there trying to win those shoots. Indoors, I could still do it because indoors is just mental game and guts, right? But outdoors and field and all that, you got to put some time into it. And those guys are just that good. You can't fake outdoors, right? But you can gut it out indoors and still shoot a clean score. Right. So it was an actual decision. It was a point where I was going to say, am I really going to do this and be okay with it? Or am I going to want to take it back once I get deep into this? So it was an actual moment of, I'm going to be okay with whatever happens. And then I started doing it. Right. And once I started doing it, right, I started the shop. I pulled one of my old friends out of retirement. Her name was Ginger Hopwood, and she was a great, developmental archery coach. She was great at taking a kid who had never shot a bow and then take them all the way up to being an absolute champion, right? Ginger Hopwood was Kaylee Johnston's original coach. She just set 3D on fire, during those years. So I said, Ginger, I need you to come out because I'm going to start the shop and I got to make this shop thing work, but I also got to get this junior archery program going, and that is going to be your job. You're going to do that for me because I can't do both. And she goes, no, I'm retired. I'm not going to do it. I just won't do it. Ginger, you're doing it. I need you to do this, and you're going to do it.
Hear me.
Right? Yeah, it's pretty much that. It was like, you did not hear me, right? And Ginger came in, and she started my junior program, and again, super lucky. I opened the doors in 2009. Y'all remember what happened in 2009? Hunger Games, Disney Brave, all of that. One of the biggest, I've seen the wheel turn a couple of times.
That was the biggest increase, I think, ever.
Over the years, but that was the biggest one.
Yeah.
When I was really young, the movie Deliverance, caused a huge upwelling in archery, And, but it was nothing compared to this, right? My first JOAD program, right? People, do you have kids programs? Yeah, come on in, 9 o'clock, right? What do we need to bring? Nothing. We'll supply everything. Just come and shoot, right? And that first day was packed. So we added another class and another class and another class. Then we started graduating them up to higher levels. And that's we quickly created this funnel where we put all these kids into, and we slowly separated out the recreational shooters who were just doing archery on Saturday for fun from the ones who were like beginning to have aspirations to be a competitive archer and be good. So we would separate them to the side so they could get the extra attention that they needed. And then the archery for fun kids could get the supervision that they needed, and they could just shoot, break balloons and break chalk targets and, that kind of stuff.
And then the kids that wanted to murder people in the Hunger Games that they were practicing for. It was 3 categories, really.
3 tiers.
Right. And then slowly but surely, I ended up with a group of kids, and Ginger was like, okay, you got this running. I'm tired and I want to go. So I'm like, okay, Ginger, I think I got it now, right? I had other people in the shop helping me keep the shop running and all that. And Ginger retired, and then I'm sitting there holding the bag. But slowly we got the most excited kids, and the ones that showed the best work ethic, the ones that we couldn't beat out of the range with a stick, that whole thing. It was just, hey, y'all reckon we ought to start a team? And they're like, yeah, that would be cool. And back then, there were only a couple of teams around the country. Like, what were some of those teams, Rhonda? Was it like Hall's Archery, Shooting Stars were over in Arizona? There were a couple of teams, but you didn't see them everywhere. So I got them together, and I said, what are we going to call our team? And we went through this whole discussion, ex-killers. I said, we don't want to be killers. We want to be approachable, So we ended up the Snellville Stingers, and then my youth group was like Honeybees. Then the intermediates were Yellow Jackets. And then this 8 kids that I was talking to about, let's start a team, they were going to be the Hornets, right? And with those kids, we started going to all the tournaments. I made a great shirt. It wasn't the normal shooter shirt. I was frustrated by the normal shooter shirts splattered with company logos and graphics and honeycombs and lightning bolts and all of that kind of stuff. With all that stuff screaming for attention, right? I thought, I'm going to make a dark navy blue shirt with a white logo right in the middle, with not a single sponsor on it, so that when I can squint my eyes and look at a field that's 500 yards wide, I can find all my people, like that. And that worked, right? So those kids went out, met other kids. It grew into an off-campus program. Then we started going to World Cup indoors and youth Grand Prix and stuff overseas. Started going to world championships because the kids started making world teams. And they met international kids that didn't have the coaching that they wanted, so they kind of joined up with me. So next thing you knew, in the highest part of the arc, is that I had an international thing that went all the way from Europe to Australia. And when I would go and do workshops in the various areas, more kids would come and go, how do I get involved with what you're doing? So are you going to travel? Are you going to be at the places that we're going to be? It's like, yeah. So I started remote coaching them or coaching them. Someone would fly in and stay for a week and get coaching and then go home. And this thing just kind of organically grew one step at a time until I ended up, where I'm at. And now I've got kids that are in their 30s. They're married. They have kids. Their kids are almost up to the point where they're needing bows, and it's been really cool. And getting all of them together created this cross-pollination that the things that some kids were good at, that the other kids weren't good at, and they were like Chris B. wanted to do YouTube videos, right? And he wants to start this media company thing. And he got a lot of help from a lot of the other kids in the group. And I helped him a little bit as he got started. And then he took off. Colby Hanley needed to make some, he came to me and says, I'm starving to death. I'm in college. I'm starving to death. I'm studying myself into a lazy eye here. I don't have 2 nickels to rub together. And I need something or I can't go to any shoots. And I was like, well, there's a whole bunch of releases with these little things, the fingers on the thing that you could custom print in colors, these little fingers. And Hoyt has a replaceable grip. I can design you a little grip that you can put in the bow, and then you can just 3D print those and just sell them. And he started selling them, right? He was making them on a printer in the Maker Center, at Georgia Tech first, right? And he couldn't afford Colby did not want to shoot as an amateur. He says, I don't think it's right for me to jump in the amateur division, because he was like 30X regular, even back then. He says, it's not right for me to just shoot in the amateur division, and I can't afford the $500 to shoot in the pro division. Can I just come with y'all to nationals and just, hang out and do the deal? Because we travel as a group. We eat at the same table. We go to the shoot together, and we do the whole thing together as a group. And that's a thing that they all value, right? They become this like band of brothers, and they really value that above, anything. And can I just come? I was like, sure, yeah, you can come. Well, when we were there, we realized they were selling bottles of water for like $4. And I was like, hey, Colby, I got something for you to do. He says, what? I said, go down to the local CVS. It's just like a block from here. Get a flat of water and put the water in your backpack. And then walk around the chute and just be like, bottle of water, $1. Bottle of water, $1. And sell bottles of water as you were walking around. He made this sign with a cooler lid, bottles of water, $1, And he made like $800 selling bottles of water. He came home, bought his first 3D printer, and put it under his dorm room bed and started 3D printing, then bought more printers and other printers. And then summer came, and he moved all that into my basement. And then the business got too big. Then he moved it into the back of my shop. We put a little wall up with a door that said UltraView on it, And he did that for a little while. Then he got a bigger space, and now he's in a huge space. And now he's got this giant company with 60 employees, and he's like selling stuff hand over fist. And Chris, with the media thing that he built, kind of alongside Colby, we were doing a jam session for Colby, which was getting together his Steve Jobs Apple keynote speech to sell this ultraviolet lighted scope in this competition called Adventure Prize. And it was a huge competition. Like all colleges do it, right? All the engineering schools. Yeah. All the engineering schools do it. And we made this whole keynote speech. We made his graphics, and we made all the pauses and and one more thing. We put the whole bit together. And Chris was there helping it out, And during that time, we came up with, nobody likes to watch pre-canned, fake hunting videos or any of that. They like to see it like it really is. And if you miss, put the miss in. And, if you just be real with what it is that you're doing, that's where the whole Be Real thing came from. And he started filming hunting as it is, right? And we drew his little Be Real logo, the first variation of it, on a napkin right in the middle of the jam session we were doing for Colby. So Chris used his social media megaphone that he created to help Colby get his product out there, right? And then we met other kids that had the 3D modeling experience that could create these exploded graphics, that everybody's doing now. But Colby was like one of the first ones to do that. One of the other young Hornet kids wanted to get into 3D modeling. So I was like, why don't you make a release? So he starts 3D modeling. Zach Harris is his name. He started 3D modeling a release, and Colby got the UltraView scope up and running, and he goes, hey, Zach, that release aid you've been working on all these years, learning this, why don't we bring that to life? Why don't we sell it? So Zach joined up with Colby. He's the one that designs all the release aids at UltraView now,
cool.
Right? And this is all team members that over time had worked together and got excited about the mission and all that, and they all worked together to help one of them get somewhere, right? And now Chris and Colby, and in their own way, when they see somebody that needs help with something within our group, they supply what it is that they need to help them out too, in the background. So it has been like an amazing trip going through this whole thing. And archery turned out to just be the bait to get all these people together in one room and facing the same direction. And then, because they're awesome, right, they started doing their own thing together, right? So I wouldn't change a thing, and how it all worked out. Yeah.
That's amazing, really.
Do you think that I'm wondering if you're creating like that? Those are some of the top people in the industry now, like Chris and Colby, and it from such a small group. Do you think that it was a filtering system where you found the kids with the potential, or do you think you helped grow them into the men that they become?
So the reality of that is they found me because they were motivated, and they saw me as a stepping stone that they could use to get to where they were going, right? And then once they were together, you know, I could advise, you know, their direction, where they were going. You know, like Colby early on in his business, it goes, I wouldn't do that, because when I did that 25 years ago, here's how it snapped back in my face, right?
Yep.
So I've been able to kind of help them avoid a few things, and it's that whole philosophy, you know, in archery, I got as high as I could get, so my point with them is to let my ceiling be their floor, so I can give them all the answers that I have experimented, and I can tell them forget about the stiff side of the shaft and forget about floating your arrows in the bathtub, and, you know, don't worry about all that stuff. And that tuning technique isn't, you know, the juice isn't worth the squeeze there for that, you know, so let's spend more time on the practice. You know, I could help like keep them aligned with their goal just by shortcutting, you know, the whole experimentation process.
Yep.
So now they're out there like Colby, we have a little check-in breakfast ever so often, and a lot of times he presents me with business things now where I go, I don't know. You have to find somebody smarter than me to talk to about that, because he's so far, you know.
Yeah.
I was a worker, you know, within the industry, you know, product designer, you know, pro staff coordinator type guy. I wasn't in the higher level business decisions, you know, so I wasn't that aware, because so when Colby's business got to the point where it was so big, it was out of my realm of experience. And it was like, you're going to have to find somebody smarter than me to find that out, because I don't know.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think it's so cool though that you had your hands on, especially with those two guys. Like it's kind of like you know, the coaching the Bulls back when in the Michael Jordan days. Like there's some sort of magic that happened within, and I know archery is a really limited industry, but the fact that you had those two guys come out of your program at about the same time, that's always struck me as.
Even with Michael Jordan, you know, Michael Jordan found them, right? And all they did was make conditions favorable for his talent to work. And that's all I'm doing, is making conditions favorable so that whatever their talents are, you know, they can use that to their best advantage by creating an environment where they can actually be used.
But I think that there's more to that than you're giving yourself credit for as well, because I think that there's a lot of coaches that have that same exact philosophy over time, and they don't produce what you produced.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm lucky. I'm lucky like that.
All right.
You know?
I get it. I know you're not going to take credit for it. But
there's a ton more stories like that. The kids that, you know, one of my junior kids, like Jonathan, he was a Hornet. He's pretty much the GM of Last Chance Archery now, right? And there's another kid who has a machine shop with a dozen machines, and he's making medical parts and just strumming along. We got PhDs, we got toxicological pharmacologists, you know, all that. So a lot of these kids went off and did excellent things outside the industry too.
Sure.
And I don't know anything about toxicological pharmacology. She did that all by herself, right?
Yeah.
You know?
But the fact that that's another interesting thing. So you think that the kids were already motivated. Like those are the kids that had the thing. Okay.
Yeah. They had that ability to self-discipline.
Yep.
And they had that ability, but basically it's the focus and the passion, right? And the resilience, so that when you do get slapped in the face, you can keep going. And when they got those three things, and that's how I pick team members, right? When they go, what have I got to do to get on your team? I don't say no to anybody, right? But a lot of times I'll go, let's do some training first and let you get to know how I work, and they may follow through.
Yeah.
They may not, right? And the ones that follow through are the ones that continue on and get involved with the team and, you know, all that. I don't let them just jump in and get the shirt and then go, right? They come in, they take lessons, and they grow, and, you know, and as long as they have the ability to stick to it, and even in the down times they can keep going, then it ends up working out for them. I don't have to tell them no, right? The ones that don't have it or they're not that passionate about it, they eventually move on to some other interest and go on their way, and I don't really have to do any active culling or, anything like that.
Yeah.
Right.
They organically remove themselves with
Pretty
how you set it
much.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, it's just not what they want once they get into it and they go, oh, I'm going to start shooting high-powered rifles, and off they go,
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You want to dive back into some of the more fun, controversial stuff at this point?
Yeah, we need the controversy for views,
Well,
right?
you want that towards the end, right?
No,
There you go.
it's not even that. I think that, so this is what I've noticed about you over time, because I've watched lots of your videos. Like, I think that the hunting community, if they're going to spend their time watching YouTube videos, is tending to not watch target stuff. I think that they're tending to listen to guys like Levi Morgan that are good shooters, obviously great shooters.
Levi's a target guy.
Yeah,
right? Who also hunts. Yeah.
Right. But I think that Chris was also a target guy who then also started hunting. So I think that what I'm saying is they're not willing to go over to you and listen.
Yeah, and I think that's a mistake.
I
because,
1000% agree.
The target technology drives hunting technology, and a shot is a shot. And I feel like that's a big reason why we can't get archery totally mainstream, because it is boring, right?
Well, can I interject for 1 second?
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but a modern setup today looks so much like a 20-year-old target setup.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's the same. They are all transitioning into it. All the equipment benefits that you've known for 30 years, right, are really only the last 10 years in modern compound bow hunting.
Right.
Right. So it's all a transitional thing. And if you can't see that, then you can't see the value in following the target people. But they're the most intelligent people in there, and everyone should be listening to them.
It's really like the target guys are constantly pushing for the highest performance. It's like the Formula One of bows and arrows, right? And then the technology that they create, and they have more people working on it, and they're highly motivated for themselves to be more accurate. So they have culled a lot of that stuff, right? And they have kind of tightened it down to the most necessary things. But then you have the hunting public that they've got a lot of guys working on that, but they don't have as broad a group of people working on the thing. So they're a little bit kind of on their own, and not a lot of their signal noise gets out into the rest of archery, and they're not really letting the signal noise from a target get into them, so they miss out a lot of stuff, and they're reinventing the wheel. Like, I had a guy the other day say, I've noticed that when I shoot my arrow with a bear shaft and a foam block, it'll kick to the right or kick to the left, and I can adjust my rest and make it stick straight. And I said, yeah, we all used to do that before we invented paper tuning. Now we just shoot the arrow through the paper and read the tear, so we don't have to do that step anymore. And he had invented a new tuning technique, but he didn't realize that paper tuning was invented to replace that one.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
So he literally had no idea about bear shaft tuning at all. He thought that
he discovered the behavior of bear shaft tuning, and that he could affect it by moving his wrist. I was like, absolutely, but you don't have to strip your arrows. You can shoot it through paper. Just get about 12 feet away, right? That's the largest deviation that you're going to get, straight out of the bow. And then just adjust accordingly to that. And you don't have to be so close. You won't bend as many shafts, when you're way off, like those things, right? So paper tuning is just a way easier step. And I get a lot of guys that are doing all of those steps, trying to make sure that their bow is correct. And you really only need one of them, to get there. And we'll talk about it when we do like a bow build, but for me, paper tuning is just, yes, the arrow is flying straight out of the bow, and it is operating within the manufacturer's suggested parameters.
Okay.
And now it's time to begin making it accurate. Right.
Do you want to talk more about that process?
Well, yeah.
I mean, ultimately, for I think the majority of our people, they're listening because they want a broadhead to hit with their field points. Ultimately,
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So in that context, I am curious what your tuning
So I got to
process
put a
is.
little bit of a firewall in between the hunting and target here, because in target archery, to get the best groups, we don't necessarily have bear shaft type flight. we intentionally put a bias into the tune in order to get a consistency as the arrow leaves the bow that will slightly cover up any little mistakes that we make at the moment of execution. With a broadhead, you cannot do that. Broadheads and field tips must be in the same hole, because if the broadhead starts to deviate from the field tip, you're going to lose accuracy. It'll be more critical in the wind. You'll lose penetration, the whole thing. The farther away you get from the target, the worse it gets. So hunting bows, even though they don't think about target archery at all, hunting bows must be more precise to get the broadheads to fly appropriately. Even mechanicals, because if you got a fixed blade that's departing, from your group, and then you say, well, I'll just use mechanicals and it'll be fixed, you still lose the penetration.
Correct.
Because the arrow hits at an angle rather than straight on, right?
Yep.
So what I do is I told you when you said, yeah, we're going to get you to do a bow build, and I said, well, you're going to be kind of disappointed because I don't do bow builds very fancy. And I put the bow together. I eyeball everything, right? And I got a new tool that I'll show you that kind of helps. And it's I don't use tools often for doing that, right? But I eyeball everything in, and the bench test in my pro shop when I'm teaching a kid how to tune bows, when they have gotten to the point that they know how to shoot a bow, they're good at it, then I start teaching them tuning stuff, because I don't want them to get muddled going to the bow fixing form stuff, right?
Okay.
But the bench test is you got to be able to take a bow, basic arrow rest and everything, set the bow up and eyeball it, check the timing, do all that stuff, right? And walk over to the paper and get a bullet hole on your first shot. If you can do that, you pass. And I'm talking whisker biscuit type basic rest, and just get a bullet hole, right? And it's amazing. I can teach teenagers how to do that, and they understand once you figure out how to see where everything is, and that's the hard part, right? Once you figure out how to see how everything is compared to the bow, you can get either a bullet hole on the first shot, or you can be just a really quick adjustment, from, to get to a bullet hole. And it's really plain. What I do with the bow. It's, a lot of guys are really looking for some hyper technical, next level kind of stuff, but I tend to keep it as simple as possible. And I look, when I do have a bow that doesn't follow, like it tears, and I'm like, all right, what's going on? Everything looks normal, but something's wrong, right? And the paper's going to tell me something is out of the manufacturer's standard here, and that's why it's tearing, right? Is the arrow spine correct? Then I start looking at things like cam lane and all that, right? But I find that if I keep my tuning philosophy and everything as simple and struggle-free as possible, because typically, like in med school, they say if you hear hoof beats, it's probably a horse and not a zebra. Well, a lot of people look for zebras when they're tuning their bows, right? And sometimes it's just a simple little move on the knock, right? And that's it. My son had a bow. Problem. Must be a flat spot in the bearing. There must be some inconsistency with the limbs. It must be this. I'm getting a random miss, and and I was like, well, just give it to me and let me look at it. And well, I was going to tell you no, don't tell me anything. I'm just going to look at it like it's a new bow, right? And I've done that before. I've been totally frustrated. I'm sure you've done it too. Totally frustrated with a bow, and you hand it to somebody else I'm sick of this. Fix this, and they go beep beep beep, boom, and it's fixed, right? And that's what I did to him. Is he's looking at things like, are my limbs longer than each other? Is my timing off? Is there a cam? Are the holes drilled incorrectly?
No, seriously.
Are the holes drilled? He's looking for all that kind of stuff, and it was just very simple. I just had to set the thing up just like a standard bow and work it out. His timing was a little off. His arrow spine was off enough to where it would tear, and he had a grip issue that was inconsistent. And I asked him, what are you doing with your grip? And he said, you remember that thing that you were telling me to keep my grip consistent? I've been working that, and my groups got kind of weird, And I said, well, forget that for just a second and just soften everything a little bit and just shoot an arrow through the paper. It shot a bullet hole. I said, shoot another one. And he shot 3 or 4 arrows through it, a bullet hole. I said, okay, so obviously you misunderstood something about that grip thing, and I don't know what it is right now, but you're fixing to go with your buddy out to Kiowee and shoot field, so we're going to forget about it right now and just shoot your grip like you used to shoot it and get through the day and have a good time, and then we'll come back and we'll see what you're doing to the grip thing that's making it crazy.
Sure.
Right. So it was just something simple, and it turned out the bow was a little out of whack, but it was him and not the bow.
Sure.
And
Right.
I would assume that statement right there is probably 95% of what you see.
Yeah, and I usually will shoot a bow, and pro shop owners will get after me about this. I will usually shoot the bow for the customer.
Okay.
Because if they're a basic guy who has just started, they're like, give me a bow, I'm going to learn how to bow hunt, and I get a lot of those guys, right? And I go, all right, and I set his bow up and I shoot it through the paper, and he goes, don't you want me to shoot it through the paper? And I said, ideally, yes, but I'm going to have you learn how to shoot this bow over the next couple months, then come back to me and you can shoot it through the paper and we'll dial it, right?
What do you think about that? That's an interesting.
So honestly, I don't do this very much anymore as what I used to, but I always tuned the bow for the customer, period. And then I had them shoot it. And if it was different, we started talking about why it was different.
Right.
We didn't move the bow. We didn't start changing things. We started saying, okay, I shot it clean. You didn't. Let's start identifying the things that you're doing that's creating this problem. It was a great, and it was almost always grip, right? But it was a great opportunity to work
Grip
on some
or
position
face
or face
drag,
drag.
those are big ones.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
two ones will typically create it, and you could help identifying it. So, okay, now try this. Move your hand this way and shoot it again, and boop, oh, there's a hole. Okay, so here's what you were doing that was creating that, and you might want to purchase or build yourself a paper tuner and stand in front of it and work on that specific thing until you get a hole.
Yep.
Because then you're not torquing the bow anymore, and you've figured out what you're doing that's creating the torque, because that's what it's from. They're getting a rotation in the riser that you're not, because you understand what makes a bow shoot straight, so you don't create pressure that would make it not shoot straight.
Yeah, and pro shop guys, they get after me about this. They're like, because the guy has to do the shooting and the guy has to shoot at the deer. And I'm like, yes, but right now, his spectrum of form is so wide, the plus minus of what it is that he's doing with his overall shape at full draw and everything is so different that he can't shoot 2 arrows exactly the same yet. Right. So I'm going to shoot it for him, and that way I can say, yes, the bow is operating within manufacturer recommendations, and then I can send him away and he can start shooting, and at least the equipment is consistent. So then he can work on himself. Now, later, he may have a grip style that has a load of torque in it, like Mike Schlosser, Matthias Fullerton, all of that. They intentionally torque the grip all the way, and they have the bow set up for that. And as much torque as they put on it, some of them will even tell you they can't get a perfect hole through the paper, right? Yep. But it's extremely consistent. I used to do if there's something with variation, max out one end or the other. But then I figured out I was better at making a medium than I was maxing something out one end or the other. So I went back to doing everything in the middle and trying to keep it medium, right? And that worked the best for me. But obviously it works great for them, right? Sure. Doing what they're doing. And I can't tell them any different until they start shooting broadheads.
Yeah, no, you can't shoot a broadhead that way. It won't work.
We would likely eat them alive if we just added a broadhead to the end of their arrow because that particular style works with target points beautifully. It will not work with broadheads.
But they also know that.
They know that.
And that's the thing is, like, they're bending rules.
We would say hunting bows don't look like that at all.
They're bending rules that because they fully understand everything about the arrow, they understand everything about the bow, and they understand everything about their shot.
Yep.
But 99% of people that are out there, they're going to sit in a stand and they're going to shoot their bow completely different than they are standing up in their backyard. And they're not going to understand why.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a big point that I was making in Martin Archery when I was making bows for them. And one of my big things was ergonomics, and that was one of my big things when I went to Stan, was let's make this product fit the user so that when they do have a spectrum of form, it supports that a little bit easier. The bow doesn't have to be right down the middle, that it gives you a little bit of variance there. And pros were saying, why would you dare change this bow? I mean, Rio and D one time, I changed the Scepter 2. And the Scepter 2 was like Martin's flagship.
Oh, yeah.
It won everything.
Sold a lot of
right. And they were angry that I changed that bow. And back then we didn't change the target bows every 2 years like we do now.
Yeah.
Right. We would get one that works and we stuck with it. Right. And they were angry. And Rio asked me, why would you change this? And I said, the world record. He says, I shot a world record with this bow. I said, yes, I know. But the world record's not a perfect score yet. There's still some room. And for pros, they're going to shoot great with anything.
Yep.
If the grip is in the middle of the bow, if the arrow is in the middle of the bow, they're going to shoot great with anything because they know how to shoot, and their spectrum of form is extremely narrow, right? But the average guy, he's going to pick this bow up and he's going to shoot it, and for some unexplained reason, this bow just works better for him. He doesn't know why, right? But because of the design of the bow, the position of the grip versus where the arrow flies through the bow, the axle to axle, the brace height, where the grip is in the center related to the center of the limbs. You know, there's a few levers you can pull to change how a bow reacts to a person. And they don't know why, but it just works better. They shoot tighter groups. It's easier to aim. You know, little things like that make it work for them, and they don't know why. But the pros, they're going to shoot no matter where I put the grip on the thing. They're going to figure out how to make that thing hit, and they will shoot ridiculous scores with it. So saying, well, the pros do it this way, investigate that a little bit deeper, because they may be the only ones that can do it with that, right? You got to double check that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. Spectrum of form is that's a really important phrase.
Right.
Like, and again, in the hunting context, because the spectrum of form varies so much based on the hunting style that you're doing.
Yep.
In a ground blind, out of a tree stand, in a saddle, all those things will negatively affect your spectrum of form.
And once you understand what are the non-negotiables in form, which are the ones that have to be there, this is what pros know. They know what the non-negotiables are. Then they can alter everything in the middle. Like, I can shoot a deer leaning back with my legs wrapped around the tree over my shoulder like this, and I can shoot a deer right on the money because I know what the non-negotiables are, and I can be completely out of body position as long as I get that line straight and it feels right, and that initial view through the pen looks like it's supposed to look, because the sight will tell you when you get it right. You've all done this before. You've been shooting along, and no matter what your experience level, everybody's seen it at some point. You're shooting along, and one time you pull your bow back, and for no reason, it's dead still, and it's right there. And the pen is just going, whenever you're ready, you can let this go. It's going to hit, right? And most guys, boom, they shoot it, it hits, and they move on to the next arrow, and their next one, if they have to struggle a little bit to get the pen in the middle, right? And that one time where you got that spontaneous stability, that was your signal that right now you just got everything right. And then pause for a second. Next time that happens, pause for a second and try to understand, what do I feel? How did I get here? Try to get to the bottom of what happened on that particular draw that made that work. And you'll get closer to that happening every time. So when I have to break the rules in a hunting situation, I'm down on my knees. I mean, the biggest whitetail I've shot, I was in this old ground blind that we had cut a gap in, and it was like old and broken down and full of wasp nests, and the deer had started ignoring it, you know?
Yep.
So I got in there and kind of modified the thing, and I had to shoot, slid way down in my chair, and I had pulled back and was doing one of these to just get the arrow out the little crack to shoot the deer. And I was able to actually make that shot because I know what the what things I have to do in order to make that actually work, right? And you can do that just through experimenting. I first learned that when I was a kid, and I'm telling this so that everybody listening can try it, is we used to play a version of horse where we got a guy up on a short tree stand or where you're standing somewhere, and we'd set, kind of like what we were doing at TAC, where we would set up a scenario and we would try to make it so hard you couldn't make the shot, and then we would stand there and figure out how to make the shot. And then we would lower down the little quiver, and they would put the arrows in it, and you'd pull it up, and we'd try it again, right? And that's how I kind of figured that stuff out. When you got to have your toe hooked in the wire of your tree stand so that you can spin around and shoot one that's at the base of the tree right there and make a good, clean, accurate shot, you can do that once you understand how it works. Right.
For me, I could go so many places. So I don't know, like, can we talk about some of the coaching stuff that you're doing now? Because I think that, like I said, the videos that you're producing and you guys are putting on YouTube, I think that there's a lack of hunters that are watching those. And I think that that's a real shame.
Yeah, and all this applies to hunting bows.
Yeah.
You know, and some of it is in a hunting context, but most of it is a how to shoot an accurate arrow context, right? So it's still valuable for the bow hunter. So if they go to YouTube, search Thing a Week, or just go to Last Chance Archery page, and then they'll find it there. And Thing a Week happened because I was helping Jonathan. He's like, I'm kind of doing more with the family business, and I'm trying to drive traffic to the website and all. Do you think you could film some tips for us? And I was like, sure. When you're down here every week for your archery lesson, bring your camera, and we'll just film a tip, you know? And we've been doing that for 15 years now. So there's like a whole catalog of everything I can think of. Specifically, there's a set for all the bow hunters out there, that whole figuring out the non-negotiables. There's a series within Thing a Week called The Big Four. And that's the 4 big steps that you got to get right. And all the little underlying pieces, right? And that's where the nose button discussion and all that came from at TAC. All the little hidden pieces that you got to do in order to create consistency for yourself, right? And it goes from how to put yourself in a shooting position before you pull the bow back so that you can manage what that looks like. A lot of times you see guys, they pull the bow, they march their feet into position, they anchor, move their shoulders around, then turn their head and look through the peep, and then they hunt the target down. Well, if you do it that way, it has a strong chance of being different every time you do it, right? But if you very systematically put all of that stuff together and verify your position before you pull it back, and I've got my eye on the target, and instead of pulling the bow back and climbing in, I'm pulling the bow and putting it up to me. So that way I can control my consistency from the top of my hat down to the floor, and I can make sure that stays correct. And just doing that, when I see, I get in my remote lessons, improvemyarchery.com. They go to, when they do remote lessons, they've been bow hunting for years, and I get a lot of these adventure bow hunters. I just drew the sheep tag of a lifetime, and I'm going to have to shoot long shots, and I'm going to have to do all these things. And we start going through all that. The first thing that I teach them is that whole Big Four, framework. And just that for these guys, they're like, I have been shooting my entire life, and 10 minutes of tinkering with this on a call, and I can see massive improvement just right now. I mean, look at Ty when we were walking around. He showed remarkable improvement just as we were going along, just by getting control of the overall body shape,
right?
And that's massive. Are you trying to get my attention? Yeah.
I was just gonna, right, for hunting, how many animals have you shot in your lifetime?
A truckload.
Okay, so she asked off mic, how many animals have you shot in your lifetime?
A absolute metric ton of deer bodies.
So George is not just a target dude. Like he is a hunter.
Bow hunt. Target archery. Target archery is my business, but I bow hunt from September all the way through to January.
Okay.
You know, because in Georgia, we can shoot as many deer as we want.
Yep.
And we've been doing that for quite a while.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Part two of that question.
Okay.
How many animals have you lost?
3.
Okay, she asked how many animals have you lost, and you said 3 with archery equipment. Do you have a rifleman sitting next to you following up?
Here's the
I lost 3 last season. I'm pretty sure. Okay, I didn't actually, but
so here's the thing is I don't take shots unless I'm absolutely sure, because I did grow up with all of those old fathers of modern bow hunting and with them drilling in my head, you know, don't you dare be shooting deer over 20 yards, you know, all this kind of stuff, right? And it was instilled in me the responsibility, you know, because I'll let a deer walk if I just don't have time to get on it, right? And I passed up a huge deer in Texas because the wind was kind of blowing, and I'm sitting there with my fixed blade broadheads going, I have not shot this bow in this kind of wind. And a 40-yard shot in this kind of wind could make a significant difference, and I didn't shoot. And the guide that was with me is like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know for sure that I can make this shot. And if I don't hash it and wound him, we can try this shot again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm very particular, you know, about the shots that I take, so that my deer that I have hit with a broadhead and lost is very low. And one of them was just a couple of years ago. It was a pig, and I dead centered that sucker. And we tracked him for 400 yards and still could not find that thing. And it was a good shot, 30 yards, dead calm, straightforward. I'm flat-footed, shot him just like he was a 30-yard field target. And when the arrow hit, I was like, kaboom, got you, sucker. And I expected him to be dead just inside the trees. And that thing was gone, right? So sometimes the best you can do, you know, and you still lose one, but I haven't lost more than 3 animals.
wow.
It's impressive.
Yeah,
I've not shot quite a bit too. you
Sure.
know?
Yeah, you're very, very particular. Or you draw back and you let down a lot, maybe.
Yeah. That's another thing.
You know, I do it so much, and they all make fun of me for it. I was like, I'm not taking that shot. Like, it's too risky.
That's one of the big things that I teach the adventure bow hunters is to be able to pull their bow back and then let it down without that awkward herky-jerky clatter of the arrow and all, because the shot may last 2 seconds, and once the shot is gone, right, once the shot opportunity is gone, if you can't let down quietly and like reset,
you got a problem.
You're going to miss your opportunity, right? And some of those guys spent more money than I've ever seen in a pile, on some of these hunts.
Yeah, especially the sheep hunters like you're talking about.
Those sheep hunters. There's a lot of money riding on that, and to mess it up because you don't know how to let down your bow, that's on you. That's just dumb.
No, I really agree with a lot of the basic form things that you were talking about. I don't directly teach people how to shoot much anymore, but one of the main things I always drilled to people's head is put your head in the position it's going to be at when you fire the bow before you pull the bow back.
Yep.
And don't move it.
Yeah.
Like, put your feet where they're going to be, put your hips where they're going to be, put your shoulders where they're going to be, and put your head where it's going to be, and don't move your head.
Yep.
Bring everything into you. Yeah. It makes a really big difference. You don't get the variances.
And once you understand all the rules and get really good at it, then you can experiment with breaking the rules, and see how far can you get out of line or off balance or whatever, and the shots still work, right? And that shot I told you about in my saddle with my legs around the tree, leaning, shooting over my shoulder like that, I actually practiced that shot while we're playing in the yard, shooting our bows as somebody's moving the animal around, trying to get it to where I can't hit it, right? So I've actually practiced that shot a bunch. So it was 17 yards, right? So I'm going to make that shot, right? If it had been 40, I wouldn't have even thought about trying.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And the discipline that you have to say, I'm not going to, that's the part I struggle with, I think, is the shot discipline to say, I'm not going to take that because I just don't want that animal to walk away. You know
that person in your life that you imagine their disappointed face being directed at you? That's how I have like Dan Quillian in the back of my head, going, I can't believe you took that shot. I taught you better than that, right? So, there's a certain amount that you try to stay with.
Well, and when you grew up in an era where the penetration capability was half of what it is today,
big time.
right? So you can't shoot a quartering toward shot because you couldn't hit the shoulder, period, no matter what. It was just too risky. Right? And we're from a similar era, right? And you only took quartering away shots, or you only took perfectly broadside to quartering away shots. The leg had to be forward when you shot, or you didn't shoot. Period. So it's a mentality from an era where that wasn't a choice. And I was also taught largely on the hunting side of things by a traditional guy, because they aren't getting through anything. So the same mentality carries over into those same principles and those same premises.
And those guys don't shoot until you can see their eyelashes.
Yeah.
Right. Those guys, you know. And the real flex in bow hunting, everybody loves to go to tack and loves to shoot long shots and all that. And I'm all for that. That's great. But how close you were to that animal is the real flex. It's the real bragging point as a bow hunter. Oh, so you see this giant 200-inch whitetail I shot? Yeah, I shot him at 6 yards.
Yeah.
That
is true.
You're a bow hunter.
Yeah.
If you can shoot a mature animal, right? And I'm not fooling myself. I know all of y'all out there, you're mule deer hunters who you're not going to get within 60 yards of a trophy mule deer. It's just not going to happen. I get it. Okay, I'm not really talking to you right now, but whitetails, whitetails, the real bragging point as a bow hunter, because the whole point is getting in close, right? So I don't take those shots, those big, long, super shots. I just don't, because so much can go wrong. And if I take that shot in a target situation and get a 5, no big deal, right? But if I take that shot and get a 5 on a real animal, that's a major problem.
That's a great way to think about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can we talk about the Total Archery Challenge video that you guys did?
Okay, sure.
Because I was reading through the comments, and there was so many people that were like, please do this again. I've never learned as much in 1 hour as this video right here.
We didn't really cover that much.
No, we didn't.
Dude, it goes to show how that particular group of people is starving for info.
And that's what I'm talking about, is that literally, like, if I had your schedule book, I'd be like, oh, great, here, let's do all the tacks next year and do this video every single time with a different group of people. Because the education that you're going to get directly into the veins of hunters by doing that type of video every single time, like, I'm serious. Go read the comments. Like, there's so many people that are like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, if you look, I'm responding to quite a few in there.
Good. Okay.
It's just like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that a little bit, and then I want to move over to the nose button conversation a little bit more. So there were different things that you were doing to Ty, then you were doing to Scotty, then you were doing to Josh.
Yeah.
It's impossible for me to be like, oh, how did you do the thing? But there was one target where Scotty's shooting a 73-yard bedded elk, and you make some changes to his shot, and he puts one right in the middle. And then he stacks the arrow on the second shot. Like, it was the definition of, here's some things you should change, and then he did, and then it worked perfectly. It was unbelievable. And that's what I want for all the hunting community.
Yeah,
so just do that real
quick. People see that as like, Gandalf the wizard, waving the wand and like curing the shooter. But every time a coach sees someone, a coach with like solid experience, boots on the ground throughout archery, right, can do what I do, right? And you look at someone shoot a few arrows, and you can see 36 little things that could be, improved or, straightened up or whatever. But one of those things is causing the biggest problem for them right now, right? So in that course walk kind of thing, you see him make a mistake. And I know, because like an experienced coach can watch someone shoot the arrow and assume that their pin was in the middle, and they can tell you where the arrow hit just by watching you shoot it, right? So when they make that common mistake, and then I go, okay, and he goes, oh, I must have done this, but that I go, well, maybe, but try this instead, right? And then it immediately fixes it, and then he realizes now that the other thing, yes, it needed to be improved, but it didn't have the effect that it had. But this thing over here, the follow through was what Scotty's thing was. The follow through, because his execution isn't perfect. So our brains are predictive, right? We're always trying to be out in front to protect ourselves from what's coming next. So our brain predicts the timing of the shot. This is kind of how target panic messes you up, right?
Sure.
Our brain predicts the timing of the shot, and then it attempts to pad the follow through so that the shot feels and looks smooth and, all that. That happens on a subconscious level without your decision at all. So all I did was force him to keep his eyes in the middle and keep his shape strong after the shot, rather than turning off the effort as soon as he perceived that the release. And I get his mindset, I'm going to hold this for 2 beats afterwards, rather than, so then his subconscious starts controlling the 2 beats afterwards, not the actual release. So it's a little bit of a dirty trick, right?
Yep.
So the release worked, and then he focused on keeping his body shape strong and not allowing it to relax. So therefore, the bow was still where he aimed it when the arrow separated from the rest. That's how he created the accuracy, because it's not instantaneous like it would be with a rifle. There's still 30 inches of influence that you can put on the direction of the arrow after the release opens. That's why follow through is important. And a lot of guys mess that up because it seems mundane and unnecessary, but it's actually everything, right? You can have perfectly tuned bow, perfect shot execution, perfect aim, but if your follow through fails on the beat of release, you're going to miss because your pin's not where you wanted it to be by the time the arrow leaves, right? So that's kind of how that works, right? And you can see, like, it's just a lot of times guys will be in a remote lesson. They've got their little camera set up, and we're on a Zoom call, and I go, well, just go ahead and shoot a couple arrows, right? And I'll ask them, the first thing I'll say is, what are we doing today, right? What are we working on? They go, well, I'm having trouble with this, that, or the other. And I go, okay, all right, shoot a couple arrows. Let me see. And with what they are struggling with in mind, I just watch them shoot a few arrows without saying anything. And I go, okay, so what you feel is this. And often during a lesson, they may shoot 5, 6 arrows, right? And then I say, here's what's going on. And they go, yeah, I can totally feel that. Here's the drills that you need to go through in order to make that better. And this is what you need to think about while you're actually doing that in order to make it work for you faster, right? And they start experimenting with that. And then they schedule the next lesson. So when they go, okay, I got this down. Now what's the next thing? Because I'll give them a list. You got these things that are wrong, but this one is the one creating the biggest problem for you right now. So let's fix this one first. And a lot of times when you fix that first really big one, the second one is cleared up automatically because this one is working. So we don't need that one, right? So then we start working on this one here, and then that one takes care of that one too. And then as a shooter advances and as they get better and better and better, it's the refinements and the things that you do get smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like I've been shooting archery literally my entire life, and I'm still working on it, right? And the more advanced shooters like Chris or Colby's on the road to 30X, and oftentimes we're sitting at breakfast talking about the mental game of archery, and we're like participating in an archery lesson, and we don't even have bows. And we're just talking about how to think about what you're doing in order to actually make it work.
You're using 10,000 grit sandpaper on Colby at this point.
Right, because he knows how to shoot a bow. He has his own style, all that.
Yeah.
Years back when Colby graduated from high school, he stayed over at the house. He was still living in Vermont, and he stayed at the house for like a month, wasn't it? It was a month or more. Yeah. Him and a couple of them, they made this plan. we're going to go down to George's, and we're about to start college, and we're about to be so busy we can't turn around and pee, much less shoot our bows, right? So let's grind this out and do the most we can for our skill level so we're still competitive even though we can't shoot, which I thought was a great idea. I'm like, yeah, come on down. And they would work 4 days a week on whatever drill that we had decided that they needed to do, and then they would test it, which is like a pseudo tournament. They come in, put their bow together, and score, right? 2 practice, score. And during that time, Colby shot 7 30X games in a row. So, right, and this is him being 18, 19. And during that time, we took a video of him just shooting an arrow. It's like, let's capture you at your just exact pinnacle of ability, right? So that later, when you're kind of out in the weeds, right, and you're not sure what you're doing wrong, some differences and things have wandered in, and, you know, it's slowly melted into a different shape, right? And that happens to everybody, right? All pros at some point hit a shooting slump, and they got to go back to the basics. I don't know how many top-level pros will come to me, and we work on that basic Big Four thing to clean up the little stuff, the personality that they've added into what they're doing that started to damage their score.
A great
right?
way to say it.
And then we go back to the absolute basics. 20 minutes, they're fixed, and they're back on the plane going home so they can get home and work on it, right? And that's what I do with Colby. He starts this road to journey of. We had a little lunch, and I was like, Colby, you know, you haven't been shooting a lot. You haven't shot a tournament in a good little while. I've been busy against UltraView and, you know, all this. And I says, I know that, but you spent your entire life getting good at this, right? You spent your entire life building up to see what your absolute realized potential is in archery. Are you okay with just not doing it anymore? Are you just going to stop? And he's like, no, I'm not going to stop. He says, road to, journey of becoming a 30X shooter, right? And we pulled out that video, right? And he goes through it. And looking at the video, he could actually feel what he was doing back then, right? So it made it easier for him to get back, right? And Colby is kind of like me. We're not super athletic, right? We can't run and jump. Chris is like the most athletic person on the earth. I tell him, change that angle about 2 degrees, and he can nail it, right? But Colby and I, we had to work really hard to get this archery thing right? Because we weren't naturally good at it, right? So at the level of work that it took for us to get to the point where we could be consistent and shoot well, you don't lay that down quite so easily, right? And I've noticed the most athletic kids that it came to very easily, it was easy for them to kind of get away from it during college and not worry about it. But the kids that had to work themselves to death in order to get it, they value that a little bit more, and they're not quite so easy to lay it down, right?
That makes total
And
sense.
that's important, yeah.
So I took one lesson with you, and it was a few months ago, and it was an online lesson. You probably don't even remember, but I literally shot 3 arrows at the very beginning. You just said
Only a couple arrows.
Literally, I just wanted, and then we talked for the rest of the hour, and you had insights into my shot that I was like, "What? How the?
How does he
arrows
know?
over
Yeah.
a camera? We're states away from each other." I would say that if you want to shortcut your archery game, that doing a lesson with a coach like George is probably the move. That, like, the number one thing that you can do, and you've talked about that before too. The number one thing that you can do to get better at archery is to have somebody who has the chisel, who can chisel away the material, the crap that's around you, to get to the point where then you're to the honing, like you talked about the 4 things,
Right.
solving that big one thing so that these other 3 become really small, and then you're working on those.
And, you know, Josh and I, we grew up in a time, right? Compound bows were not fully formed.
No,
right?
You had to shoot
They
that
were-
thing every day.
Yeah, they were all
not what it
over
is
the
today.
place,
Yeah.
right? They were different designs and wheel styles, and, you know, like everything. And I got something to say about the Matthews single cam too. So remember,
Love it.
come back.
Love it.
And you know, it's a personal little thing right there. But anyway,
Don't worry, we're gonna fight before it's over. It's fine.
but the bows were not fully formed. And if you look at all the bows that are out available right now, the design has pretty much stabilized.
Yep.
And everyone is kind of doing a very similar thing, right? They've got their own little wrinkles and things, but the basic, binary style cam for most bow companies is the basic root of what they're doing.
Don't you dare call it a double cam, you dirty
Right.
little man.
No. The Matthews bow is a double cam.
Fucking double cam, dude.
All right. We had to kind of figure all this stuff out. We had to hunt and pack, and I remember figuring out how to adjust my sight on my bow by just moving it and seeing what the effect was. And it was like, oh, if I move it up, it hits down, right? So, okay, all right. So how can I remember this? Oh, yeah, follow the arrow.
Chase the arrow.
I got it. Follow the arrow. All right.
Yep.
And I had to just basically invent the wheel, just learning how to be accurate with a bow. So now, by going to the coaches nowadays who did invent the wheel with their own archery and all that kind of stuff, you don't have to reinvent the sport by yourself in your backyard, right? You can get pretty good watching YouTube and all, but if you get with someone and they can shortcut you through all that, just give you the current known answers. These are the laws of archery as we know them right now. Then you can understand those and get those working. Then you can start working on new stuff that we haven't even gotten to yet, right? And that's how archery ends up. Like you watch the scores over the years. I've been in Vegas shoot-off many times, and the top score has slowly crept up every time. More people in the shoot-off every time, the whole thing. Because archery is advancing because of things like Archery Talk. And now we got social media and all of that a lot of people don't have to figure it out by themselves anymore.
Yep.
They can start at a more knowledgeable state and then start polishing the stuff as appropriate to themselves, right? Until it gets better.
Yeah.
So getting a coach is important. And look at any professional athlete, none of them did it by themselves.
No.
Not one. And for some reason in archery, there's this whole, I'm doing this by myself. I ain't going to let anybody tell me nothing about what I'm doing with my stuff. And I'm like, that's fine, bro. You can listen to what I say and you can work on it or not work on it. It's totally cool with me. I'm just trying to cut 10 years off of what you're doing.
Well, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's the lack of knowledge of the resources that exist. I think that's really what it is. I think the majority of people go, well, I don't know where to find a coach.
Yeah, there is the uncoachable, and then there are the people who just can't find the coaches.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot larger group as over the other. And that, whenever I was selling a bow to somebody or something, I would tell them the same thing. I was like, $200 towards learning how to shoot a bow is way more valuable than the difference between those two things that are $200 apart.
Yeah, that's my ad. Go to a George Ryals workshop and get a more accurate bow free.
Yeah. but it's very realistic. It is. You're going to take 5 things away from that, especially if you're recording it and go back and watch it because you're going to forget.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? But you take away 4 or 5 things from that make you better at your sport. It's way more valuable than the next greatest sight or the next greatest arrow rest or whatnot. The equipment is better. All right, the equipment is more precise. The equipment is more adjustable than it ever has been, and much easier to do it with. Right, but that doesn't change the fact that you still have to know how to shoot the bow correctly, and that's the hardest part, and it always has been the hardest part. Lessons or knowledge-based transfer is the most valuable thing, which is why so much of the educational stuff that we do gets seen so much and watched so much, because there's just a lack of it.
Yeah, and as a coach, when you find a group of people that is hungry for what you're doing, that makes you want to coach. But if you got people that aren't interested in what you're doing and, they're not consuming, what it is that you're trying to tell them, you're going to find the people that do it. So I love the vibe over at the TAC event because those guys are so hungry for any little extra tidbit that they can get their hands on. I was helping Cody from Easton down on the practice range, and we kind of drew a little bit of a crowd because they're all just standing around there watching him get his lesson. And I could see a few dudes listen for a minute, and they would go, oh, and then they would get their bow over there and start shooting, and they're talking to their buddies. They're like, holy crap, that works, And so I'm going to do a lot more of those good TAC things because that's a huge group of people out there that actually want the information.
Well,
So
anytime you want to do another thing like we did, many times as you want, I'm happy to do it. Put a group of people together so you can try to teach them along the way. It's just
my year this year is jammed, but
I'm done this year. Next year,
I'm going to definitely add several. At least I ask the TAC guys, like, what are your big ones? And I'll start off with the big, most attended ones, and I'll go from there, and then just kind of grow out from there. I just got to figure out how can I bring my product to that group, in a way that I can eat, I can make money off of it. That's one thing. Sure. But how can I have the greatest effect in that context? Because I can't course walk with 1,000 people, right?
Sure.
But I can do talks.
You're getting an envisionment of what you can provide in those things.
Yeah, just trying to figure out how can I provide, for a larger group of people.
You could probably talk to Sean about setting up a station on the practice range where you are literally live teaching people and they pre-sign up for it with a predetermined dollar amount at a predetermined time. Because there's so many people that go to those things that can only get to shoot one day.
Yep.
But they're going to be there for 3 days because they're looking for something to do and they want to be around the event. I bet you that would be the easiest way for you to functionally monetize and justify your time. And make
or maybe
he
could set us up with just a little short, a little course off to the side that's not part of the TAC group, that's specifically for people with cameras and things to walk through, and do course walks. So we're not interrupting the shoot, and we don't have to wait until the end of the day either. We can still walk through. And I can course walk on that.
I think that you could also, just in your local market, because ultimately the goal should probably be for you to do online lessons for people where they're paying you a good amount of money per hour.
Yep.
A justifiable
and that's
amount
what
of
I'm
money
doing
per
now.
hour. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that filling that schedule up is probably your highest dollars per hour until it scales up beyond that, where it's...
And I have quite a few people across Target, and people around the world do that.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm working now on creating like classes that people can go through. So
you like a full course.
Yeah, so they can get a
Yep.
course and go through and get everything, and they can start and stop and review.
Fantastic
idea.
idea.
With a little community attached to it. That's what I'm working on now, so that I can help, people can consume, the knowledge without me actually needing to be there to dispense it all the time, because I'm somewhat maxed out with what I can do.
I didn't know that. Yeah, so
personally.
Yep, got it.
But I still have some room, but I need a way that I can like teach without actually having to be standing on the spot, to do it. And that's going to be the difference.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Are you teaching, so basically the end of my lesson, you said, I need you to go shoot a target round so that I can see impacts.
Yep.
And then that will give me feedback beyond what I'm seeing here.
Mm-hmm.
So will you incorporate that type of thing into the training, where it's essentially, it's almost like the kingpin thing that we've talked about, like, hey, move a couple of boards to the left and then you'll hit your strike.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is, when you're scaling something like this, how accurately do you think you'll be able to tell people without them talking to you, shortcutting them into the future of being better?
So what I can teach is how to look at the target, right, and see the patterns that you need to be able to see to understand what's happening.
Got it.
But that's what the community aspect for the lessons are. That when somebody does have something like that, and we do a 1 month check-in with everybody together in kind of a community Zoom or something like that, and then I can do it there too. I can actually be present, for them, to some degree, the people that buy in and actually consume courses and stuff.
Yep.
But I do that with people do follow-up lessons, and I tell them, so, okay, here's the deal. I need you to practice all of this stuff. And I tell bow hunters, even though you don't care about target archery and you will never go to a target thing and score and shoot your bow, I need you to actually shoot a target and score it so that you have a measurable metric, right?
Number.
That we can track improvement. Because if you want to lose weight, you got to track what you're putting in your mouth. If you want to make money and grow your money, you got to track where your money's going and what it's doing. So if you don't track how the archery is improving or not improving, you don't really know. You're kind of guessing, right? And I can look at the scatter of your, target, and I tell them, I said, just shoot a score, snap a picture. Work for 4 days, on whatever thing that you think you need to work on, for that 4 days. Shoot another score, right? Take a picture. And then when we meet again online, I can, all right, let me see your targets. And then we look at the targets, and then I look at the scores, and is the number going up or did the number stick? And then I go, well, I'm looking at your target, and the reason that your number's kind of staying still right now is I'm seeing everything is grouped kind of low, that if you look at the center line of your target, there's not very many arrows above the center line. So
you're not sighted in.
Are we freezing below the target?
Or
are we
freezing?
Are you Scotty and are you giving up on the shot? But you can see that based on impacts.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think would
there's
translate.
a tell there that you can see.
But I think that allows you to scale and build a course where you're not having to spend the 1 hour sessions with somebody individually. Yeah. But I also think that the bigger market, other than the target market, is I think that there are hunters that as long as you were in the ecosystem and they got to know George Ryals, they would spend their money, because I think that I can't think of an archery coach that gets it down to like the ability to shoot a 30x game that does a better job of giving the information out than you have. I just think that it's been so target focused that the hunting community feels separated from it.
Yeah, a large part of my study at becoming a better coach and a better teacher and all that is learning the ability to convey the information in an understandable way. Like a lot of guys know how all of that works, but I know a couple of just industry super geniuses, but they can't convey the information in an understandable way, and you end up kind of bewildered by the facts and you don't really get the gist, right? So being able to explain it in a consumable way for people is a talent that can be learned, but it takes a long time.
I agree.
And I've worked with some of the best coaches in the world and learned how they work by working with them, right? So that way I incorporate the things that they say, and every now and then I'll hear somebody teaching, and they'll say, well, it's kind of like when you do this, A, B, C, D, right? Correlate, what they're doing to a ballet dancer doing something. And I go, ooh, that's a really vivid way of like explaining that to somebody. So I add that to my repertoire, right? And then that mistake that you see the guys making on the tack, there are 16 different ways to teach a person that exact same thing. And I'll try one, and I can see, that it doesn't land or they're just not quite getting it. And I go, well, think about it this way. And I change the explanation, and eventually I get to the one and they go, oh, right, I get it, right? And then they're able to do the thing and see some improvement right away. And it's just years of doing it. Some of the oldest coaches that have been in it, there's not many of us, but the ones that are out there that are the oldest ones that's been doing it for the longest time, they have dozens of ways to explain one thing so that the 14-year-old girl can figure it out. The grizzled veteran at 55 who is missing an arm, he can figure out how to do it, right? So you can boil it down to the basic essentials so that each individual can actually use the information their own way. And that's where the real coaching, talent is resting.
I think it's also because you still seem to care. Because I've gone to a couple of other coaches and had archery lessons with them, and I think they could care less about me in that moment. And I know that's crazy sounding, but literally, I think that they were delivering information. But the difference was, I feel like you genuinely cared if I started shooting better and started.
That goes back to the focus, the passion, and the resilience. The pillars of success. If I got some hate on the internet and said, you know what, screw those guys, I don't have to teach them anything on Instagram. Fine, bye. But I keep doing it because in those comments where the haters are, there's also people there saying, I tried it and it worked, right? Mm-hmm. And those are the people that I'm out here for. The other guys that don't want to do it, that's cool. Do it how you want to do it. Nobody's begging you to be good at this, right? Mm. You do what you want to do and enjoy your archery and everybody's happy. But for those of you that want to learn, come on over here and I'll show you what I know. And if I don't know it, I'll tell you who to go to that does know it.
Go. Yeah. Do a thing.
Do a thing?
Do a thing.
Do a thing?
Go.
All right, let's readdress the nose button controversy. Start to finish what you what you said and what you expressed.
Okay. So I noticed when Ty was shooting that it was extreme uphill, right? And that was already a problem. His form was, way out of line, so that wasn't working. There's a few other things that were out of joint, but then he also touched his anchor and moved his head into the string and then tipped his nose because the string angle was really tight, right? Trying to look through his peep. So that whole position change made him so out of joint that the shot was just not going to work. You could look at just the overall instability of his bow and just know it's just like you're just waiting to hear the arrow clang, and then you're going to go, okay, here's what you need to do, right? Yep. Because it's going to miss when you see him set it up. And I told him, I said, you're having to tip your head over really deep, and you're kind of you're kind of looking like, this to see through the thing. And you don't actually have to touch your nose to the string. And the string angle on his bow, and his draw length is a little short, so that made it a little bit of a problem too, right? That, tell you what, just don't touch it. And I'm telling him, shoot another arrow. Just don't touch the string with your nose. And that's when whoever it was in the group goes, cut it off, right? So we cut it off, and told a funny story about cutting a bowstring, or Dave Cousins having to make a bowstring. Everybody totally missed that. I was really disappointed. Everybody totally missed that.
It's a way more impressive thing than what we were doing.
It is. Totally missed that elephant, right? But we cut it off, and he started shooting, through the course, and saw genuine improvement, and it was easier for him to be good at it, because the nose button and its particular setup was forcing him out of shape in his shot. And the more that shape, like on the dead level and at a single distance, it would work just fine. No problems, right? But the minute you start changing angles, and the minute that you start changing distances, and the distances become extreme, either crazy close or crazy far, the nose button is a very singular point, and the peep height is a very singular point, and it works and is optimal at one range. And as you move the sight up and down the bar, the viewing angle through the peep has to change so that you can see it, right? You've got your peep, and you got your scope, and you move the scope down here. If you look at Thing Awake, I demonstrate this with a camera looking through the peep sight so you can actually see it work. But when you move the scope down to your distance, you have to change the viewing angle to be able to see through the peep to the scope to the target, right? So on those extremes, like if you set your peep and your nose button at 60 and you're going anywhere from 120 to 2 yards, right? If you set it in the mid-range, it's going to be a minor trade-off on either end, right? But there's still a trade-off that could ultimately affect your accuracy. But if you set it at 20 yards, the trade-off is major at 120. It's barely usable, right? And I think that was the state that he was in, as he had set it up at a close range, and it became barely usable as it was uphill and at distance. The point that I'm trying to make, everyone, the point that I'm trying to make, I'm not saying do not touch your nose to the string. I'm saying you don't have to. And everybody can test this. Pull your bow and just put your eye, behind the peep. Don't anchor, don't do anything, and just look through the hole and shoot. If your arrow hits dead center, you are good to go. Everything is great. Your form is working, the whole bit. If you're a right-handed shooter and you miss to the right, that means you've sighted in a significant amount of face pressure on the string. And as that face pressure varies, your left and right's going to change, right? Yeah. So we got to eliminate that so we don't have that variance that can be anywhere from a gut shot to a neck shot on a whitetail at 40 yards with a broadhead, because the broadhead exaggerates all of that stuff.
Correct.
Right? So learning how to, and the cure for this, right, is when you pull your bow. This is part of the big four, right? Step 3, the cure, when you pull the bow back, most people anchor, look through the peak, put the pin on the middle, right? That's how the general way of doing it is. But if you pull the bow, you know, guys will do this, and they pull the bow, level it off with the target. And note, I haven't touched my anchor yet. I'll put the pin in the middle because as I look through the peep, I'm creating pressure. So I'm going to put the pin in the middle first so that the pressure I create is pointed at the target. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to get the peep as close as I can get it, right, without anchoring. Mm-hmm. You know, it'll be a light touch or a brush right here. Mm-hmm. And I'll get right there, and then I'll position my head so I'm seeing through the peep, and the peep is circled with the target, right? And the pin that I'm aiming with is on the target, right? And then I'll finish my anchor after I'm looking through the peep. Because if you look at it like this, I'm going to do this at the camera so they can see. But if I anchor right like this, and you'll see that the peep won't even line up with my eye. So if I anchor first, I have to turn my head into the string to see through the peep. So I end up creating a variance of face pressure, and the rotation of my stance or the angle of the shot will change that face pressure significantly, right? But if I draw the bow back and then position my head so I can see and then finish my anchor, mm-hmm. then I can measure the touch on my face, mm-hmm. and I can eliminate if not all of it, so that I can get an accurate shot at all distances. And that's the test. If you do a no-touch shot and it hits in the middle, mm-hmm. you have no face contact issues and you're fine. If it misses left for a left-handed shooter or right for a right-handed shooter, you need to worry about that face touch because it's causing an accuracy problem for you, and you may not even know it. You might think you suck at archery and you can't hit anything. You may not be able to even get a tear through the paper because of the face drag, right? Yep. So once you correct that, you'll see a significant improvement in your accuracy. This was not a hit on a nose button product.
I think it was taken that way pretty harshly.
It was not a hit, right?
Yeah.
I just said you don't have to, right? And my viewpoint, the peep, well, this is pretty well one of the laws of archery, right? Or otherwise you wouldn't be able to sight in a shooting machine and let it go and it hit, right? One of the laws of archery is the peep runs the show. Without the peep, your anchor touch is critical. Your nose touch on the string is critical. It's critical, right? With the peep runs the entire show, right? So touch your face, don't touch your face or whatever. As long as you're looking through that peep, it's going to hit. And everybody can test that in their yard with their hunting bows and see how it is. Mm-hmm. Use the smallest peephole that you can stand to look through because the size of the hole dictates its capable accuracy level.
Okay, we need to stop. Save that for a minute.
Okay.
Let me respond to what you said.
Okay, all right, got it.
All right, so I think the biggest takeaway from that whole discussion was all really good, and the biggest nugget of value in that whole thing was testing whether or not you have face pressure on your string.
Big time.
Hugely, hugely beneficial, and never really heard that discussed too much in that. So the negative of what people were watching is they were just focused on this one little thing. It's like, hold on, you're missing the key here that was really valuable is the face pressure. Mm-hmm. And being able to test whether or not you are influencing your string based off of your face pressure via impact, and you told them exactly how to check. Thank you. That was greatly valuable, greatly important. I think what was probably missed and glossed over from most was that the whole point of this was nothing was fitting tie correctly.
Right.
Draw a line. And it wasn't the fault of a product or anything like that.
Nothing to do with
it was
the
that
product.
Nothing was fit to him correctly. And that was where the problem was lying, and it kind of got focused into one spot by the internet, not necessarily you, me, or anyone else.
Right.
I want to actually stress that I think the nose button has a really good value because as we're discussing the face pressure issue, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to have a hard time putting a lot of nose pressure on your string with that thing. Because that hurts.
That is true.
It's going to force you to barely touch your string.
Absolutely.
When it's implemented correctly.
Right.
And the whole point was it wasn't being implemented correctly.
And from a target
not that there's
archery,
a problem with it.
And from a target archery standpoint,
yes,
no one can put an exact amount of pressure on the string. And if you pull your bow back in a draw board and just touch the string, you can see how fine of a pressure actually deflects the peep position, right?
Yes.
Ella Gibson cranks at target archery, shoots ridiculous records. Her scores are like, oh my God, I cannot beat her. And thank God she lives somewhere else, right? Okay. She's crazy talented, and she uses a nose button, and she uses that nose button at 50 meters.
Yeah.
Right? For a single distance indoors, 50 meters. If you want the nose button and the peep, you can totally use it. It's not going to hurt you, right? But do you have to have it? No, you don't.
No, and the other thing that got really beat up over it was not putting your nose on the string doesn't make a difference. And any professional archer's got their nose on the string.
Yeah, because we set our bows up so we can do that.
Because you set it up so you can. And it was glossed over that, hey, this wasn't like a broad statement of just don't do it. But it looked that way, and that was where the venomous, I think, came in from it.
Yeah, and people like the real venom was coming from people who had a interest in nose buttons. Right. That was where the real anger came from. Yeah. There were other people out there questioning.
Yeah.
There were other people who thought I was crazy just because they just don't know, right?
Yeah.
But the real anger that carried on out of that was people with a vested interest in the sale of a product. And that's cool. If somebody told everybody that my product was garbage, and I might get out there and get angry on the internet too. That's okay. I'm not faulting them for that at all, right? But the thing is that I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying don't go out and buy that thing. I'm saying you don't have to. Can you use it? Yes. Do you have to? No, not at all.
Thank you. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
go on to the
right?
peephole size thing, because I want to fight you on that too.
There are a lot of pros that their nose does not touch the string.
Well, yeah. Jeff Rogers won Vegas 4 times.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they don't touch.
I would say 97% of all probably have their nose on the string.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah,
95?
it's fair.
90. Give me a number. What are you thinking?
It depends what bow you're shooting.
It's good to say most.
A comment from off camera came in that there are pros who do shoot without nose contact on the string.
Okay, so but it's the most common by far.
Right. The pros that
Thank you.
no, yeah.
And once again, she's off camera. It's George's wife sitting in here with us while we discuss. She said there's plenty of pros that do not put their nose on the string just to make sure, because she probably can't hear her voice over the microphone.
Yeah.
So
And
whoever's
again,
repeating it.
what the pros do, sometimes not everybody can do what the pros do.
Fair.
Right. And many pros, when they're shooting a bow with a very short axle to axle, they maintain their head position and they shoot with a no nose touch anchor, or they choose to anchor higher so that they can touch their nose to the string because they like that feel.
Yeah.
And when they have a high let off bow and they anchor higher and the touch is very close to the D loop, it has a smaller effect on the deflection of the string, so the inaccuracy part isn't as big. So that's a choice that people make. The ramifications of that choice is that if you anchor higher so that you can get a touch without tipping your head, right?
Yeah,
you lose distance.
There's a ton of distance.
Yeah, that's the only drawback to that, right?
Yeah.
So most pros know, and if you watch them shoot, they set their body up, they draw the bow, and they put the bow up to them. You won't see a big...
Not a lot of movement, yeah.
Dave Cousins is one of the rare few that you see make a big head move to anchor his head to the string, and that's because in relation to the scale of his face, his nose is bigger than most. And there's 2 guys out there, Butch Johnson, who's passed away now, Butch Johnson and Dave Cousins, right? They have a pretty big nose, and with the nose touch, it would be too extreme. So they draw
the opposite
to this side of their nose so that the size and length of their nose didn't create an inconsistency with the string. So all pros will make modifications for consistency, so nobody like fits the mold. I mean, there's pros out there with absolute gorgeous form that I watch, and I'm just like, oh man, I wish I could do that, right? And there's pros out there that have very non-standard form.
Very different.
That's a
Yeah.
nice way of saying that.
Very non-standard form. And you're like,
How are you shooting
I don't
so good?
know how they shoot so good for so many years doing that, right? But that's how they learned. And as an archery coach, I can't teach you how to shoot a bow like Jacob Marlowe shoots a bow.
Yeah.
Jacob Marlowe is one of the most accurate humans that's ever walked the earth, but you can't teach his form to other people. That's what he developed on his own, right? Well, that's the reason we have a definition of defined form, because biomechanically speaking, this is the easiest thing for the human body to do. And then later, pros add the personality, like my nose is too big, so I'm going to anchor it like this. Or I'm blind in my right eye, but I'm so right-handed, I can't shoot a left-handed bow, so I'm going to
So
draw
you're
under my
drawing
chin, and I'm going to look through my left eye. There's all kinds of stuff they do, and they're crazy. I mean, Matt Stutzman can beat me in a match at USA Archery, and he doesn't even have any arms.
Right.
He can't even use back tension. He uses butt tension instead, right? But going back to the peep sight thing.
Yes.
The peep runs the show, so the size of the peep hole makes a difference. And people have gotten on to me where I have said, don't worry about ringing your scope housing with the peep. Ring the target instead, because that's what we're shooting at. Align yourself with that, not the housing, especially if you have multiple pins in the housing, because once you start going down the rack of the pins, the alignment is broken, right?
Correct.
If you have the pin in the middle of the housing and that's the only one you use, ring the housing, doesn't matter, right? But if you got multiple pins in the housing, it becomes a problem. That whole ring the housing thing can be traced back to like 1991, 1992. Spot Hog sold the first sight
Circular,
with the circle housing, with the ring, and they were really big on the educational aspect, and the things that they educated the public about were aligned with products that they were putting in that space for that educational piece, right? So right around there is where the whole ringing the housing with the peep came from. One of my buddies, when they saw the whole controversy, they found that article and sent it to me.
Now
And they said,
we are going to get comments about this part.
They said, if anybody asks you where all this came from, this is what I've been able to find as the very first reference to ringing the housing. And it was a Spot Hog article talking about the importance of the round housing and the alignment ring and, all that. Now,
Ironically, target archers.
That's right.
Spot Hog's all target archer guys.
And so the peep housing, my problem when I first started going, whoa. Hey, y'all, forget about ringing the housing. What are you doing, right? Because they have these pen racks with a housing that's this big, and then they get out in their backyard where it's the bright sunlight, and they can't see the housing anymore because their eye shrinks way down, right? And so they don't have that field of view up close anymore, and they can't see the housing. So they get a bigger peep. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Because if you have a 1/4 inch peep, you can make an 1/8 inch mistake and not even know, right? And you're missing high-low all over the place at 40 yards, and you don't know why, right? And simply centering the housing is not enough to correct that, right? So just like on a rifle scope, if you have a 42 millimeter objective lens, right, and then you switch to a 50, you're going to get more light gathering capability.
Right.
But if you switch to a 56, you don't get any extra, right? The beneficial return on objective size ends somewhere around 50 or 52, depending on the length of the scope.
Right.
Okay. With peep sights, it's kind of the same thing, that an 1/8 inch peep transmits all the usable light that you can possibly use in a low light situation. So that leaves you with a 1/16 mistake, right? And you not even know. That'll still hit at 40, right? It'll hit low or high, but it'll still hit to kill a deer at 40, right? In target, I use a 3/64 peep, which is like a pinhole. Younger guys use a 32nd peep, which is an even smaller pinhole, right? And even way back when we were in our 20s, they had a peep called a Papeep Mini. I don't even know what that size was, but it was like the pinhole in a pinhole camera. And
Yep.
if your head was the slightest out of position, you were not seeing through that peep. So it forced your head in orientation to the target, or you couldn't see through it. So the bigger the hole is in your peep, the more out of orientation your head can be. The peep can be rotated. You can still see through it. You can make all sorts of mistakes, and the bow will allow you to shoot that arrow without giving you a signal that, hey, something's wrong. You might miss, right? You don't know, right? So using the smallest peephole that the lighting situation will allow will give you more accuracy than trying to ring the housing, right?
Peeps on sale, PodyMarcher.com. Discount code BMAC 10% off right now. Everybody just order your 1/8" peeps.
Yeah, get you one of them Hamsky peeps.
Get you one of them
brand.
Hamsky Raptor
Get
peeps.
you one of them Hamsky peeps that you can change the sizes and you can experiment for yourself.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
You can experiment for yourself, and you'll find that in a hunting situation, you don't want to put yourself in a range that, trophy buck is here, and it's just at daybreak, and I can't see him, right? The dark leaves, the dark deer, and you've got ambient light, but you just can't see it, right? So, yes, you may be able to shoot in your yard with a 16th peephole, and it may shoot like gangbusters, but I highly recommend on your hunting bow, go ahead with the 8th, because there'll be some situations where your 16th peep might put you in a situation where you can't shoot. Right.
So now, in-depth question on that. So what I've found, I have a longer draw length, and I traditionally don't shoot like super long axle-to-axle bows. I'll shoot 33, 34. I try to stay in what I feel is an adequate thing I can still hunt with. It doesn't seem awkward or big, but it's not the longest thing. Target, I'd shoot something longer, obviously. I've always had to have a larger peep because the peep's farther away from my eye.
Yep.
Now, the number that you're referring to and the percentage of hole size that adequately transmits light will change the farther away it is from your eyeball,
It
right?
will. On the outer edges of the chart.
Yes.
Right? The super short draw lengths, right? And the over 31 draw lengths, right? That peep is a significant distance from your eye. And yes, that general rule of thumb about 1/8 inch breaks on both ends of the spectrum. But in the
bulk of the meat
of the bow community, it still holds true. There's always those outlying use cases. But you're absolutely right. When you draw back your 30-inch, 29-inch, 30-inch, 33-inch bow, the string angle is going to be so tight that your string might be that far from your eyeball, where my peep is this far from my eyeball, right? So that makes that hole behave much smaller. And I don't know the math. I bet if you talk to Chuck Cooley, who was an optician back in the day, he works for Zeiss now, and he knows everything there is to know about the optics of archery and the lenses and the peeps and how they work with the clarifiers and the verifiers and all that stuff. He knows everything there is to know about that, and he's the guy to ask about what do you need to do at the extreme of your draw length and peep distance to make sure that you don't find yourself in a situation so he can shortcut you and you don't have to get in a hole at 5:30 in the morning and test it on a deer target to make sure that you're able to do it, right? You can just ask Chuck and he'll tell you, so that way you don't have to do the work.
Yeah.
Right?
So that whole discussion really clues into what I used in the past versus what I use now over time. And I've always, after the last like 9 or 10 years, I've sought out, I want my pin in the middle of the housing. The second one underneath, it's fine, but I want it in the middle of the housing. That's really like emergency use only kind of thing. And I'm always trying to find the smallest housing I can get away with. So I can functionally use a smaller peep and still see the parameter of it. And yeah, I get in the middle of the day, it's going to be a little smaller. At the fringes in the morning and the evening, it's a little bigger because of light transmission and whatnot. And I'm traditionally just trying to forcibly frame it to where in the fringe lights, I can see it. And if it dims down below it in regular light, then so be it.
Right.
But I still want to be able to see my bubble at draw.
Yes.
Especially in relation to distance and the sizes that you were referring to. I was like, George, I won't be able to see my bubble ever.
Yeah,
like if I shoot an 8th or something like that, I
we
couldn't do it.
used to set the bubble up like underneath the dot. So you could use that and the bubble would be in your secondary vision. But somewhere in the late 90s, customers decided they didn't want that bubble being so close, that they wanted the clear view. So they moved it all the way down to the bottom of the housing. And most people can't see their bubble, right, when they're aiming without kind of looking through the bottom of the peep, right? So in my procedure, when I raise the bow up to pull it back, I look at the bubble and it says, yeah, you're good, right? Just I pick it up, look at the bow, I'm okay, right? But I don't level it. I just make sure it's in the zone, right? I pull it back, settle my shoulders, and right before I put my pin on the target, I glance at the bubble. And if the bubble's in the middle, or at least within the zone, I'm good. And then I move it over. But if the bubble's pegged out one way or another, I made a mistake here. And that's what made the bubble peg out on one end or the other. And that's my sight saying, you made a mistake, redo that, right? And learning what those different pieces are, those little checkpoints, to make sure that you haven't made a mistake somewhere downstream. Learning how to do that early will help your overall accuracy too, right? And the bubble is important, super critical, especially when you're shooting multiple distances. If you're shooting a single distance, not as important, right?
Right.
The farther away you are, the more important it becomes,
Yeah.
but not as important. It's not deadly critical, but it does have a role.
Gotcha.
Right.
All right, so I need to back up just a hair on one of this thing. So you're telling me if I take the housing completely off of my...
It's only there to protect your pins so you don't break them off while you're walking through the woods.
I'm so confused.
Well, no, seriously, like, great example as you were discussing the first round housing. They weren't round before then.
Right.
You always centered on the
Yeah, they
pin.
made some like the rifle scopes.
I remember
like a long oval, you know.
Yeah,
there's a few
and
of
then,
those.
and then my first bow had no... Like I just had brass pins that was sitting.
Yeah, pins with a little wire thing out there to stop you. Yeah.
I guess physics, like just thinking about the references that you're using to be more accurate, to me it makes sense that this hole lining up with this hole would be the move.
It makes sense until your pin isn't in the middle of that front hole.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the aiming device, the actual pin, not the holder for the pin, but the actual pin needs to be in the middle of your peep, not the housing. So you may notice that if you're really accurate or you're using a shooting machine, if you center the housing on the peep and then you're getting out to 100 yards, you'll notice that your 100-yard shots on your tape that's mathematically created, your 100-yard distances will start hitting low, and you got to add more to it at 100 because you're looking through the bottom of your peep instead of the middle of your peep.
Okay.
Right? So that's why you put the pin on the target first, then move the peep in front of your eye and stop when it circles the target, right? Even though the housing is misaligned, the aiming device is in the middle of the peep. Then your numerically made tape that you shot the 20 and the 60 and you pulled the tape and stuck it on your sight bar, that will actually come true and it'll read accurately. So all of y'all out there that your tape is a little off in the middle or it might be a little low on the ends and you need more distance, it's the alignment between the aiming device and the peep and the target that's a little out of joint that's causing that discrepancy.
I'm going to have to mess with some of this. I
love that where you're like,
that's why
I'm
you
going to have
shoot
to
around
try
housing
that.
with a pin in the middle of it.
Well, when you're hunting, are you hunting with a single pin?
I have a single pin and I have a backup pin, that little one, the little pin down below.
Yep.
And on my bow, my centered pin hits at all distances. And let's say if I have it set on 20, that smaller pin down there at the bottom hits at 32.
Okay.
So if I get caught, if the deer pops out and I got to shoot now and I don't have time to reach up there and turn my thing, I know that pin is 32, so I can kind of gap it and still take a good, accurate, high percentage shot.
Yep.
Right. So out west bow hunters, they're dealing with much greater distances. They've got their bottom pin set up as their mover, and then they got all the other pins stacked in at actual distances. All that stuff has its place, and it's necessary for the shooting position that they're in, right? But for me, and I can't even see a deer if it's more than 30 yards away in Georgia, so my little single pin that matches my tape, and then a little backup secondary aiming device is all I need.
But you're saying that there is a place for like whatever, a 5-pin slider if you're going to go mule deer hunting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're also still saying that it's less accurate if the pins are, let's say, in the bottom third of the scope housing.
You make it, you mess up your yardages or your tape if you identify on the housing itself instead of the device, the pin that you're aiming with.
Okay.
So the simple cure, pull it back, look past the peep, and put the pin on the middle of the target, and then put the peep in front of your eye, and that'll make sure that the pin and the peep and the target are aligned with each other, and you can let it go, and it'll hit dead on.
Yeah, I'm going to have to just visually mess with some of this stuff.
Yeah, so all of you at home, if you have an 1/8-inch peep, right, or if you don't have an 1/8-inch peep, get your bows, go out in the yard, and on purpose align the pin in the top of the peep hole and align it in the bottom, align it left, align it right, shoot a few arrows. What's the effect at 20? What's the effect at 40, 50, 60? And see how critical is that? And then when you change the hole, how much better does it group? Right? When you change the hole size, you can experiment for yourself.
Yeah.
And prove it to yourself, because that's before I started hanging my hat on these little, superstitions and sacred cows, and before I started killing those things, I tested all this out first for myself and was like, yep, this is true. I tested it on the other people that are in my program that are shooting any wild tuning thing or something like that. I've already tested it through the Colby and Chris's that are in my group, and they've helped me verify that, yep, this is a thing, right? And then I start teaching it after that.
Gotcha.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier about 12 feet being the optimal paper tune distance. So the Yates in the backcountry study that just
That's
came
where
out?
I got that from.
Okay. All right. So that's what I was wondering is, had you predetermined that already, and then it was confirmed through Yates?
It was confirmed through theirs because
all
I knew as I walked back,
Yep.
right, doing arrow testing and things, I was looking at the recovery rate of arrows and things like that. Like, how far back do I need to get before it becomes a bullet hole again? How far back do I need to get before the fletchings are stabilizing? And I realized that when I got that 12 foot or so distance, in actuality, I had it at 9 feet, right?
Okay.
But, that's just me doing it by hand. But as I got back, I realized the apex of the tear distance was at about that distance. And then when I was watching a thing that they did, it's really smart stuff that they did. And when I was watching that, they were showing a graphic representation, showing slow-mo arrows and all that, that it's actually 12 feet. So I edited my beliefs on that because they had real scientific data that says 12 feet.
Okay. All right.
So I changed that just like that because they had the smoking gun proof.
Proof's in the pudding.
Yep.
Yeah, that's been an interesting one, that study. I feel like, there's a lot of redneck stuff that has been kind of
Lots
occurring.
of witchcraft and redneck science
But
out
I
there.
also think that there's some redneck science that they actually got to the right answer just by trial and error, because they said, here's what we're going to try, and it's going to be confirmed by this. But then I think there are going to be some sacred cows that are, like you said, slaughtered because of the test.
And it's interesting enough that when I'm having a debate with pros, like Gillingham and I, we debate all the time on various things. And Gillingham, if you ever have a tuning anomaly and you don't know what it is and you've tried everything, if you call him on the phone and say, this is behavior that I'm noticing and these are the things that I've tried, he'll know because he's done it. He's tried everything. And both me and Gillingham and all the other pros my age, we have been looking our entire lives for the magic tune, right? I gave up looking because I couldn't find it. Gillingham's still looking, right? So he knows all of that stuff. So we'll debate like on something, like fatter arrows being more forgiving than skinnier arrows and all of that. And we'll debate on why would that be? And why don't we shoot fat arrows at distance if they're more forgiving? That. So we debate, and I thought it was because of one thing, right? And then Gillingham tells me what he thinks it is, right? And then he changes my mind because I was looking at the wrong thing.
Okay.
Right. And then he pointed out what the actual thing was happening, that was the lever, that was being changed that caused that thing to misbehave or behave. Right.
Yeah.
So all the time we'll find out that we've been totally looking at the wrong thing, or we may be attributing some, redneck science to it that's just totally incorrect, and it's actually this thing that's that happens all the time.
Yeah, that does make sense. That makes sense.
So when people do real peer-reviewed scientific studies and then they test all these things out, almost every one of those studies that I've read or watched happen, we discover other things because we thought it was this, but it turned out to be this, right? And I pay really close attention when people are doing actual studies, because that's where you really learn a lot of stuff, because they screen out all of the, suppositions and guesses and, all of that, and they find out what's actually happening. And then that way I can simplify tuning much more because I don't have to worry about all that other stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got any more of the controversial things? You got any more questions?
Those were the
George?
two things, man. That was it. But he wanted to hit me on a single cam thing, though. I remember that.
Oh, the single cam thing. All right. I was working for Martin Archery, right? We had 2 cam bows, the Martin Fury cam.
Oh, yeah.
Fastest cam out there, deadly accurate. We were winning tournaments with it. And that was back when our target bows were wood limb, 48 inches axle to axle, little tiny round wheels, and 10-inch brace heights. And this is what you must do to make a bow forgiving for target archery, right?
Yep.
And Dave and I realized Dave showed up with cams and glass limbs, and I showed up with cams and glass limbs, and everybody thought we were crazy. You'll never win an archery tournament ever, right? Right about that time, Matthews came out with the single cam, and their selling feature, this was 91, 92, somewhere 92. In there.
Yep.
And they came out with it, and they go, 2 cams are dead. 2 cams are impossible to set in time. They're impossible to keep in time. You can't do it. You don't even want to bother yourself with it. So we have a 1 cam. There's no cam timing whatsoever, right? And I'm going, what? 2 cams aren't hard to time. It's super simple. You just look at it. It's nothing like the little round wheels that had no wall or anything, right? You just look at it. It's not hard. That's crazy. That's not even a selling feature. Nobody will believe that. Well, boy, was I wrong.
Boy, they do.
Boy, was I wrong. All right. So what they did is they basically told everybody that timing 2 cam bows was a problem. And they inserted a fix for that problem. The fix, though, had its own problem, that there was no repair for it, right? Mm-hmm. If I vary the pressure against the wall with a 2 cam bow, and if I get vertical misses, this is called creep tuning, right? And when I first put creep tuning on Archery Talk, everyone argued with me like it was nose button on the string. They argued just, you wouldn't have believed the vitriolic comments and hate that I got off of that. Well, now it's a standard practice, right? Yeah. With a single cam bow, if you're heavy on the wall or if you're light up into the valley, you'll get a vertical discrepancy in your hits, even at 20. There's nothing you can do to fix that, right? You can change the orientation of the cam. You could modify your single cams like a lot of the pros were doing back in the day. They would put a screw in the track, like collinear with the track, so the screw head was sticking out in the track, so it would come around and stop the cam. So
not on the actual cam, on the actual
cam.
Okay,
the wheel, the cam.
Yeah.
So that they had an actual stop there, and there was much, much, much less sponge.
Okay.
So they could get more consistent pressure against the wall, and they didn't get that vertical dispersion.
Okay.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
Roger Willett, Chuck Norris of archery, he figured that out, and he ruled the world with a single cam bow. Braden Galantine ruled the world with a single cam bow, right? I'm not saying you can't hit anything with it, but you got to be pro level accurate in order to do it. Average bow hunter dudes, they might notice some high-low. They might notice some high-low broadhead planing because the broadheads exaggerate the issue, right? But with a 2 cam, I can add a twist here, add a twist there, and I could totally clean that up. And when my arrow, like Hoyt, their bows used to be right at the pivot point of the grip. So the arrow was 2 inches above the measured center of the bow. So you had to adjust the timing because the arrow was off center in the bow.
Sure.
You had to adjust the timing so the nock would go straight through the bow, right? So in the drawboard, your bow would look out of time if your arrow was that far above the center point, right? But you shot it anyway, because if you shot a weak, super careful, timid shot, boom, it hit in the middle, right? If you shot a really strong shot because you were going to put a little extra pepper on it and you're going to win this shoot off, boom, it hit right in the middle. And that was one of our black magic secrets, all the way back to the little round wheel bows with the Martin microtune yoke system. We'd turn that screw until we could shoot a soft shot and a hard shot, and they would both hit right in the Vegas X, right?
Yeah.
And we gate kept that secret because that was the difference between winning often and not among shooters of the same skill level, right? That one little thing created a level of consistency for years. Well, when the Fury Cam came out, you could actually see the cam come to rest and you could eyeball it in. And at Martin, I realized how the cams needed to be out of sync in order to actually be sync so that the arrow could fly straight, right? I moved the center of the bow, and that was one of the things they got mad at me about because I split the center between the arrow and the grip so I could have a little bit of a balance. Many bows today are made that way,
Most are,
right?
I think.
And so I did it that way. So both cam profiles can be the same shape, and the arrow can still fly straight out of the bow and not at an angle, to the bow. Rex Darlington from Darton, the original founder of Darton, he recognized this and he created what's called a CPS system. And the cam on top was a slight bit bigger than the bottom. Later that became the cam and a half system with Hoyt. Yep. The cam on top was a slight bit bigger, so when the arrow was off center in the bow, you could pull it back because of that additional cord length on the cam. The nock stayed centered through when you had visual timing, in the middle. So Matthews had the single cam, 2 cams are garbage, that whole thing. And then Matthews is a marketing company that also offers bows, right? And they make a quality piece of equipment. I'm not downing their stuff, everybody. Matthews makes a quality piece of equipment. Let me get that straight right now.
I've said that phrase to them multiple times. You're a marketing company that makes bows. And you make really good bows, but you're a marketing company that makes
Delta
bows.
is a bank that also offers flights, right? So the Matthews, they had the marketing game down, right? And part of my job at Martin was to make sure I maintained the back cover of the magazines back in the day with print advertising. And if I went to sleep and missed a contract renewal, Matthews would snap that back cover. It was a real thing, right? And I've almost been fired over losing a back cover before, right? So that was the thing. You couldn't pick up an archery magazine. You couldn't swing a dead cat around in a show, right, without hitting a Matthews ad, right? They won the marketing. Well, then they came out with the no cam. We went from a single cam to a no cam. And the no cam was actually a 2 cam system, right? They just had a round concentric string track, but the eccentric, the cam part, was on the backside where you couldn't see it. That lasted 1 season. And then I think what was next was the Chilex, right? Was that the next one?
I believe so, yeah.
Straight up 2 cam bow. Straight up. Right? And here's the difference. A 2 cam bow, the cam hooks to the limb, the cable hooks to the cam, and it terminates on the axle
of the limb.
or the limb, right? A binary cam, the cable connects to one cam and terminates on the other cam by way of an idler that's concentric with the axle, right? That's the main difference between the two. Right. So now Matthews, after spending all those years, single cam's the only way to go. Don't buy a 2 cam. You'll never get it right. Right. They spent all those years. Now their flagship bow that everybody wins with and kills animals with is a 2 cam system. Right. That's my thing. Right. It's just like, come on. Right. And my whole thing back then was 2-cam is just simply more accurate because it's malleable.
Yep.
Right. I can adjust that for you and how much pressure that you have against the wall. And if that pressure varies, I can alter that adjustment so the variance in pressure doesn't change where your arrows hit. You can't do it with a single cam bow.
Yep.
Right.
You remember the year Hoyt came out with a single cam?
Oh, yeah.
You remember their first page in their catalog was like 3 paragraphs talking about how stupid this is, but we're doing it anyway.
It's like everybody wants a single cam bow because the marketing works so well.
You're forcing us to do
this. All companies had to get
I think in paragraph 2 it says, we fully believe this will come back to this at some point, but because you demanded it, here it is.
And they were right.
And they were right, because we're all using 2-cam bows. They can call them whatever the hell they want, and you can get it on technicality of, well, it's not fixed hard to the axle or the limb. Fine, it's still 2 equal but opposite eccentrics.
Yep. But the bow cam, the cams today, right? Used to, if we had an arrow that was dead center in the bow, and it didn't shoot a bullet hole, all we had to do was go up to the yoke, add a twist here and there to make it work.
That's your wheeling manipulation.
Yeah, but they took that away from us, and now we got to take the axle out
Didn't you
and
love
move
that?
the
It's
spacers.
so
and all.
simple.
It's like, why did y'all take that away? That was such a great thing, right?
I hate
now
it.
we
How
got
it was on the outside.
The only
of the
argument
bow.
you could make for it is it was half of the material, so it was likely easier to stretch than a full solid piece. Where Hoyt did it great because they used a whole solid piece, and for a year or two, they tied it together so you could actually manipulate it and it would stay. Right. And then they took the tie off, and I'm like, no, what the? No. It's like, no, now it just free floats and it doesn't do nothing.
But now they got that tricky system with the screws in the limb pockets, XTS.
XTS.
Oh, I
so good.
love that
so
much.
It's so, that is the best tuning system I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
It's
And
phenomenal.
so now I'm okay now. They took my yoke away.
I got it back.
And I cussed the entire archery industry every time I had to pull an axle. Customers had to listen to me going, I don't know why they're making me do this, and I really hate doing this, but I'm going to get your bow right. Don't you worry. And I'm like adjusting their stuff, and it was like, this took way longer than it should have, but look, you got a bullet hole, you're ready to go, right? But now we just twist, and it's back. So now it's just as easy as altering the yoke.
Yep.
And I can't wait that hopefully I can imagine that they won't put that on the target bows.
It's got to be on there this year.
And that's
It
one
has
of
to be
those
on there this
instances
coming
that hunting technology is now probably going to drive some target technology now.
Yep.
Right? Which is cool. Yep. But I can't wait to figure out what kind of tuning forgiveness can we create by making changes with that against a person group tuning.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that hopefully, Hoyt, if you're listening, please put those pockets on my target bow. I would love to see that I could have a shooter shooting and I could go, here, give that to me, and I can add a little twist and then hand it back to them and watch the group change. If that's the case, that would be absolute.
I guarantee you it will.
I mean, you think it will? It should be more subtle the longer those limbs are, right? The more subtle the change is going to show.
Well, I think the longer the limb is, the smaller change has a greater effect just because of the length of the limbs. You know, when you move a lever from the
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's because it's actually changing the angle of the limb.
But even on the hunting bows, those are like
right.
11-inch limbs, I think.
I think they're 11s. Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
11 or 13, one or the other.
I think it's 11.
And you can, when you twist it, you can see it.
Right.
You can see it. It doesn't take a whole lot of
No,
twisting.
but you probably are right. That
make
makes
that
sense
work.
because of the way that's moving the XDS. It's if the limb was longer, it would actually extrapolate the change more.
And the other tuning methods of canting the limb pocket or changing the roll of the limb pocket that a few other companies have tried, that it was like it was really easy to get that out of whack, right? And the beauty of the XTS system is if you do feel like you got lost out in the weeds because you made too many adjustments and you forgot what you did, you could always just put it back to
where
zero
you started at.
and then retest and fix it, you know. So the limb pocket thing, it took some expertise to make sure that you had that exactly right. It equally worked, but it just took some precision, you know, to make sure that you had that
The
right.
XTS is kind of dumb proof, if you ask me. It's very, very
super
simple.
easy.
Manipulate it all you want and just put it back to where you started from. There's simple, and there's gauges and marks on everything, and you can watch it, like you're saying. You can twist it and watch it move. it actually functionally changes that simply. But it's so simple to tune a bow with.
I
now.
see some of these like super simple innovations that companies are making. And when at Martin Archery, when I was having that problem with cam lean and, those things, and I had ran it down to the fact that it was width of the limb inconsistencies. And if I had a limb groove cut into a solid limb, the ears of the limbs had to be exactly parallel and the width of those ears had to be exact. And I was all around, while trying to sort out that problem, what they did with the XTS system, but never saw it. Yeah. And then when I see them do it, I go, like, It's like they are so smart. Dang it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you talked about the solo cam being something that you felt like in the moment you saw that solo cam was probably not the way.
Yeah, I was like, nobody's gonna like that. That's crazy.
What's that thing now? Like 10 years from now, what's the thing that we're all looking back on 2026 going, I
really don't have one. And the reason why is because the bow design is so stable now that there's not very big differences between company to company on the decisions that they've made.
It doesn't even have to be a bow.
It's, like Matthews, each bow company has its own philosophy on how to make a bow smooth, how to make a bow quiet, how to make from rack to 3-yard bail, how to make a customer choose that bow, right?
Yep, the 3-yard tournament.
And the I see over the years, I see different companies winning that, just standing, just around while people are testing bows, and I'm just kind of watching and hearing what they're saying to their buddies and all that. And I was like, Bowtech's winning this year. Because they did something, and the guys were like, oh, my God, this is so dead in the hand, right? You and I both know that vibration has zero effect on accuracy whatsoever.
Correct.
It is not a measure of bow quality at all, right?
The only thing you can really correlate it back to is probably noise. The more vibration a bow has, typically the louder it's going to be, and that should typically matter to a bow hunter, especially
a whitetail bow hunter. It should matter to a bow hunter, but studies are now showing that the deer are reacting to the sound of the arrow's approach rather than
we were going to get there,
right?
We were getting there.
Okay, you're getting there.
We ask every person who comes in here that has a wealth of knowledge what they think it is.
And Chris and I argued about that, because I was like, your bow makes noise. The deer have a reaction time that's genuinely accepted at 0.3 of a second. So your bow has to average 420 feet per second to hit a deer on the mark at 20 yards if they react to the bow noise, right? And I was in they're reacting to the bow noise camp. Deer, and Chris was like, no. When they duck down, you can see it on video, when they collapse down and their head always looks at the arrow as they're leaving, right? He said, it's the sound of the approaching arrow. So I was like, no way. So he did some tests on video where there's a deer right there and he shoots his bow the other way and the deer don't react.
That's smart.
Right?
Yeah.
And the deer didn't react, right? So he proved it for me, and then since then I've seen it. And then the new vanes out there that are much more stable, much more quiet. Well, I'll probably just shut up on that so we can get into it the way you want. But it's showing now that it's the noise of the approaching arrow rather than the bow itself. But Matthews, we have what's called limb pre-bend, and that's the measure of how much the limb is bent to rest, right? So it could be, like if the limb is laid over this way, it could be 1 inch, right? Or the limb could have a reflex, like the older Hoyt bows, they would like reflex straight. But then when you string the bow, they're
elite Martin limbs, same thing.
And they're like bent like nearly 8 inches, right? So when the bow is at rest, the more pre-bend that you have in the limb, the more standing string pressure you have. That's the amount of pressure that is on the strings on a strung bow. The more standing string pressure you have, the faster the oscillation of the string, the boing, when the bow shoots, the faster the oscillation ends, right? So Matthews has laid the limbs over, So they make the energy go straight up and straight down as much as they can. And they have very low standing string pressure, and then they put string stops on it to stop the vibration, the after verb of the string. So that was their solution for making it as smooth as possible with the smallest noise carryover, right? The smallest resonance once the bow's been shot. Where Hoyt, PSE, they bend the limbs a little bit more, and the standing string pressure is much tighter. So instead of bang, right, you get a dink, but it's a higher pitch, and it has a little bit more sound that carries over a distance. So there's trade-offs there, right, between the two. And the bow companies have been zeroing in on the right limb angle versus standing string pressure and all that, so that they've finally hit their pocket. And some people just don't like Matthews bows because of the after resonance that they can feel. Not that it matters anything, right? Other than just window dressing, the overall feel. Doesn't matter, right? They just don't like it. So they choose this bow, right? And other guys don't choose that bow because it feels louder and tighter to them, and they can sense something after the shot, and they perceive that as lack of quality. So they go over to this one.
Would that change draw force curve? I assume it would.
It does.
It would.
Yeah. And the way that they affect that is you've got the string track, which is effectively the lever, for pulling the bow.
Yep.
And then the force is that eccentric on the back. And basically the orientation, like if the limb is standing up kind of tall, the orientation of the lever, it will be like this. As the bow lays over, right, as they bring that, the eccentric has to change angle, so that the bow still operates normally. And if you just look at your bows, you'll see that now. Now that I've pointed it out, you'll see it, right? So when they have it designed that way, it'll work just fine. But if you took cams, if you could take some cams and put them on a different bow that came from a different limb angle or something, it wouldn't be good at all, right? Just because it just wouldn't work, right? So that's kind of how the in cam design and riser design and the center with which you hold versus where the arrow goes through and all that are some of the levers that you can pull to affect accuracy and sound and shape and vibration and, all of that. And different companies have different things and different people like different stuff. And as a bow designer in my past, I used to try to figure out, was there a consistency in how people selected bows, right? Or is it just random? And as far as I can tell, it's pretty random. Like you'll tell a guy, shoot any bow in here and pick the one you like, and then tell me why you like it. It'll be just random as it can be. You get 10 guys do that, they'll come up with 10 different things, and that's cool because all the bows today, I'm supposed to say Hoyt's the greatest bow that's ever been made. You should buy a Hoyt bow. But all the bows out today are quality. They will shoot an arrow more accurate than we can possibly shoot them. And we are the variation, not the bow.
Yeah, we've never been in a better time for archery equipment.
Oh,
it
for
is
sure.
so good
for
today.
sure.
It's wild how good
I
it
can
all is.
take a guy that's never touched a bow, and in just a few minutes,
Give him a crossbow, and he can hammer X's. All right.
Yeah, in just a few minutes, right? They can have a basic proficiency where I can turn them loose. Go home, shoot the thing in your backyard, have a good time, enjoy it. In 2 weeks, bring it back. Let me double check your timing and make sure everything is cool, and then you're good to go, right? And I can do that with confidence because the bows are high enough quality now. It doesn't take the black magic that we had to do, those little skunky modifications we had to do to make a bow consistent. We don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
My bows that I'm shooting right now for target archery are literally out of the box. I didn't even change the factory strings. That bow I shot at, that came out of the box the day before I got there, right? And I roughly got some sight marks, and it works just fine, right? The one thing I want to tell everybody, though, is the things that bow companies have to do to make the bow feel good doesn't necessarily make it forgiving.
Right.
Specifically, the grip. They want to give you a grip that's soft. It may be an overmolded thing that has a combination of soft material and hard material, so your hand feels, so that your hand feels right, and the edges are rounded, and you hold it in your hand, and you're just like, oh, this feels so good, right? But with a rounded grip, it is so easy to make a grip mistake and not even know it. So an aftermarket grip that's accurate has sharp edges, so you can feel the left and the right edge when you're centered, right? You look at all the custom aftermarket grips that are made to fit bows, the edges are sharper, right? They maybe have some non-skid. They have a wider flat spot. And based on what you're the master class, once you've reached master level of shooting a bow, the final level is grip making, right? How to angle the grip so that your particular relaxed hand shape rests in the correct spot rather than allowing it to melt out of shape, like those kind of things. It's different for everybody, right? So aftermarket grips that have sharp edges, they're going to be way more consistent and they're going to give you a lot more feedback, but the bow companies cannot put those on the bow because somebody will grab it and go, oh, it's kind of sharp. I don't even like this. This is clunky.
They just lost the 3-yard tournament.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So just be aware, right, that some of that stuff, there's some aftermarket things out there that can make you make your bow a lot more forgiving that doesn't really have anything to do with the bow brand.
Yep.
And like Matthews, an entire cottage industry sprung up around replacing their grip.
The wood grip back in the day?
Yeah. And I never understood why someone at Matthews didn't go, there is like a bazillion-dollar industry going on right now around replacing one part of our product. I wonder what the problem is with that, right? And they never really addressed it. And I was amazed, being as aware as they are of what people want, I was amazed that they never quite paid any attention to that.
I mean,
they have now. They have now.
They did.
Choices. Was it last year? Was it last year they actually
2 years
gave
ago
out?
when they came out with the multi-grip kit
Yeah,
you could
there's
buy?
like 4
We're
different
30
options.
years into this now.
I know.
I know, man. They bought 15
I
years
know.
worth of wood grips because they got a discount from the kids in India.
Dude,
to
the
make
number
them,
of grips I'd take off every year was wild.
Yeah.
Just and they're glued on with like that black 3M adhesive. Gotta polish it off and whatnot.
And you can
it
find
was just terrible.
You can find thing a week videos where I'm teaching people how to use Sugru and plumber's putty in order to make grips on their Hoyt and PSE bows too, right? But my tack with that is here's what the angle does, and when you change this parameter, this is what you get, and when you make this nice and sharp and flat, this is the benefits from that. And you can look at your hand after shooting 3 shots and see, do you see 2 nice lines in a consistent color? Your grip is good. If it's blurry and red, your grip's probably all over the place, and you should pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Right?
There's got to be some way that you create, like there's a machine you'd put your hand into, and it would feel the different pressure, give you a base level, whatever, a square riser, and then it would 3D print you a custom grip based purely on, like how on sheep feet.
You could put a strain gauge, or a pressure plate, on the grip and have a guy shoot several arrows and then draw your averages and then change the angle of the pressure plate until the averages got tighter. Yeah. Right? You could do that, but the level of expense that it would take to do something like that would just be crazy.
And you're probably saying it's not worth messing with the technology side of it.
Coaches can watch your knuckles and how they work when you pull the bow back to full draw. They can watch your knuckles and what they do or what your wrist does and they know, okay, I need to tip that angle off this way a little bit for them. So that's not a problem.
That makes sense.
Coaches can do that just by watching.
All right, let's dive back into the question. So we ask typically people that come in and hunt a lot, which it sounds like you hunted a lot. Are deer reacting to bow noise, arrow noise, or the sight of the arrow coming?
So I don't think they're seeing the arrow coming, right? Unless the sound gets their attention and they just turn to look. And often in video slow-mo playbacks, you see their head turning that way at the same time that they're lunging to bolt, right? But I'm convinced that it is the shh that's getting their attention.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I hunt in Georgia, and there's a lot of rednecks in Georgia, and those deer are jumpy, right? You can't hardly bat your eyelashes in a tree stand without a deer catching you, because every Joe Bubba out there is hunting deer, right? So those deer are highly educated, and they walk through looking into the trees, right? And that's why saddles work so well, because we can hide behind a tree, right? But they walk through like looking, in the trees. So they're already on edge, right? So the slightest little tree stand squeak, and they don't stop and look. They just run, right? So it's harder, to hit a deer. I've had in the mid 90s, it was right at carbon arrows, aluminum arrows, right about there, that I had a bow set up that was crazy fast with an ACC.
Sure.
And I shot over the backs of 2 or 3 deer because they jumped my arrow. And I'm talking like 25 and under.
Wow.
I was missing them, just straight clear, not even a deer hair. And I just straight clear missing them. And I was like, this is crazy. I went back to my 2314s with my big old Rothar snuffers. And those snuffers, they made a noise when they flew, but the arrow was much quieter because it was heavier, right? That's why I was convinced that it was the noise of the bow, right? But they're still reacting. I'm almost certain now that they're reacting to the sound of the arrow.
And you said Chris did some testing where he was basically just shooting the bow into a bale next to him or whatever when there was deer in the field.
Yeah, there's like a deer there, and he shot his bow the other way.
Yeah.
And the deer didn't react.
I got a bunch of doe coming in on my clover field right now. I wonder, can I do that testing right now? Am I going to get
As long as you don't
call the
shoot
game
at
warden?
them, yeah.
As long as you don't kill a deer,
you're fine.
And as long as the game warden can't say you're harassing wildlife,
You're firing the opposite direction. How are you harassing wildlife?
It's interesting.
you're participating in a scientific study for the benefit of modern bow hunters.
It's a very interesting.
Hello, Mr. Green Jeans.
Exactly.
We're conducting a scientific study today. No animals were harmed in this study.
Yeah, I thought it might be interesting to take a target out there and stick it next to him, and then shoot at that.
Well,
way.
that would scare them. The arrow hitting the target would scare them.
Somewhat, but there is something that's with it coming directly at them versus even like 5 feet away, because you'll have like 5 in front of you, and the one you are actually shooting at reacts way worse than the other ones.
Oh, now incidentally, here's another wrinkle to this.
Yeah.
Shooting a recurve bow at a really young age with wooden arrows, I got follow-up shots on deer more often, and I think that the recurve bow and the wooden arrow was a more organic sound that had its place in the environment, and that didn't scare them as bad.
I've
valid.
heard that. I've heard that from a few
valid.
people, like shooting bears, where they've shot 3 or 4 times at bears in the exact same scenario. And obviously bears are a lot less sensitive.
Well, and it's the difference, too, between a prey animal and a predator animal.
Yeah,
sure.
The predator animals aren't going to be near as jumpy as the prey animals.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. But I still think that, okay. I mean, we're getting fairly consistent feedback that arrow noise.
It's pretty obvious now with the slow-mo,
Yep.
Replays. Like, I missed this deer, but let me show y'all, all these bow hunters, on YouTube do it. I did not actually miss. The deer jumped my arrow. We're going to put a dot where I was aiming, and you're going to see the arrow went right through there. And that's a great demonstration,
absolutely.
To show people that this is what happens, and you're shooting at a moving target, and nothing is a sure thing, when you're in the woods, nothing. So the best you can do is do your best and don't take risky shots, to make sure that you don't lose a whole bunch of animals.
Yeah, no, I never published mine, but I showed it to you where I shot at a deer at 40 yards, and it fully ducked my arrow completely. Like its belly was on the ground when my arrow passed right over it, and it was exactly where I pointed. It's wild.
Yeah. I think if you bow hunt long enough and you shoot anything over, especially a whitetail, between 30 yards and beyond, you're going to get the matrix. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, my son missed a massive buck like that. Just, oh my God, there he is. And he pulled back and let go, and the deer just went, bye, and just left. He didn't even touch it.
Yeah.
We
got anything else you want to say to wrap it up?
Man, I think that covers it.
It was great.
Really good.
Yeah, it was super good.
Yeah,
George,
good.
where can
George,
people
thank
find you?
You can find me, if you want to get lessons, you can find me at improvemyarchery.com. And there I list, when you go to Improve My Archery, it goes right to the scheduling page. You'll see some workshops in various areas around the country that are scheduled that you can buy a seat and go to that spot and participate in a 2-day long workshop where we go from front to back. It's like 14 hours of drinking from a fire hose, right? Learning everything I can possibly remember to teach you about archery. Or you can choose a online remote lesson where you set your phone up with your, headphones, and then I can talk to you, watch you shoot. It's very effective. And then I do in-person lessons. Right now, I don't have any availability for in-person, but will very soon have in-person availability. So you can come in, I can watch you shoot, help you with your bow, do whatever. And soon, because of the popularity of the course walk, I will throw a couple of course walks in there as well, where you'll meet me at the local field range, and we will walk a 14-target course, and I'll walk you through a course walk so that you can get a full, rundown of how to do field archery and the various things that you need to do for that. So
for the hunters, we call that Total Archery Challenge. We don't call it field.
ImproveMyArchery.com. You can also just type George Ryals into Google. I'm out there, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all that, just as George Ryals. So you can find me pretty easy.
And we are going to try to have him come in and do a class here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd love to do that.
We'll do one here for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for watching.
Appreciate it.